Exploitation Hollywood 1980. Hey, fanfic family. So glad to see you here again to continue this incredible adventure. As always, kindly remember, this story is 100% fiction. So don't go looking for dimensional portals in your closet. All rights to this fantastic novel belong to the original author. We're just your humble narrators of epic tales. Are you enjoying the fanfic? Show it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and dropping us a like. And if you're impatient for more exclusive content, our Patreon is your happy place. Chapter 76: The Rules of the Game in Hollywood. Alan Parker stared into Ronald's eyes for a few seconds, then nodded. All right, Ronald. I underestimated you. The fact that you even asked that question shows you're a qualified Hollywood filmmaker. Let's resolve this the Hollywood way. Go and call producer Mr. De Silva. Parker instructed his assistant to fetch the producer. A moment later, De Silva arrived at the director's location. After dismissing his assistants, he whispered a few words to the director, and the two sat down opposite Ronald. De Silva then spoke. It's like this, Ronald. We have an agreement with the original screenwriter, Christopher Gore. He will have exclusive screenwriting credit for this film. As for your contribution, we will consider compensating you financially by signing you a supplementary contract as a screenwriter doctor. The total price is $3,000. Can I join the Writers Guild with a screenwriter doctor contract? Ronald asked. The producer and director exchanged a knowing glance. I'm afraid that won't work, Ronald, De Silva said slowly, taking out a cigarette, lighting it, and taking a drag. The Writers Guild needs you to write the script for a guild-approved film before they'll accept you. Writers' doctors edit scripts without credit, so they don't earn points and therefore can't join the guild. You're still young. With this writer's doctor contract, finding a screenwriting job, whether on Broadway or in Hollywood, won't be difficult. In the next 3 years, if even one of your scripts is made into a film and released in theaters or on television, you can join the Writers Guild. Then Hollywood will be completely open to you. $3,000, a stepping stone to future opportunities. Ronald thought for a moment. If he didn't already have Directors Guild membership and a stable income as a portrait photographer, he might have agreed. But now, he wanted more. Ronald shook his head. No, that won't do. I need to be credited on the script. My goal is to become a film director, and screenwriting is the only shortcut for someone like me to direct films. I've heard that major studios don't train new directors like they did 10 years ago. Joining the Writers Guild as a screenwriter gives you the opportunity to write screenplays, and if your script gets picked up and made into a film, you can become famous and then become a director in just 2 or 3 years if you're lucky. I'm not like those kids with acting backgrounds who can easily get into the industry. Nor am I like those rich kids who can finance their own films. De Silva leaned back, ran his fingers through his dwindling hair, and gave a "this is troublesome" look. Ronald, you're a young man, don't be so stubborn. Ask the people you know in the entertainment industry how hard it is for them to get in. This contract for the screenwriter's doctor offers you a fantastic opportunity. Just take it and submit your resume. It won't be hard to find a screenwriting job. The opportunity might come next month, maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year, 2 years, who knows? If you get lucky and your script gets picked up by a studio, you'll have a chance to be accepted by the Writers Guild. Then keep writing scripts, and studios will take notice of you, allowing you to realize your directorial dream, Ronald said. 6 months later, next year, the year after, that's great, of course, but why not now? I want to join the Writers Guild right now. It's your promise. I'm not the one who made the mistake. I shouldn't be punished. Besides, you're changing the subject. We're not discussing when I can join the Writers Guild, we're discussing why you didn't keep your promise. Promise? De Silva laughed. What promise? I don't recall signing any commissioned screenwriting contract with you. Ronald looked at director Alan Parker. Are you planning to go back on your word? Mr. Parker, you promised me. As long as the scenes I wrote were good enough, you'd let me be credited in the script. Think it over carefully, young man. Think it over carefully. Alan Parker tapped his large head and smiled at Ronald. Since you've chosen to handle this in a Hollywood way, you have to abide by Hollywood's rules. Think about it and give us an answer in the next few days. Alan tapped the table. Remember, Ronald, I don't necessarily need your script. Doris's storyline isn't something only you came up with. The same goes for the scenes of the other 3 main characters. The implication was somewhat malicious. It wouldn't be difficult for him to find a screenwriter to rewrite the scenes he had written. Enraged, Ronald shouted, "I have evidence. I wrote the scenes for 3 main characters. I can sue you for intellectual property infringement. Go ahead and try." Ronald, De Silva scoffed. "We have MGM's lawyers. Let's see which New York law firm dares to challenge us on the West Coast." Ronald fell silent. He blamed himself for trusting them so easily, for taking their verbal promises too seriously. He thought Hollywood was full of people like Roger Corman, people who kept their word. The director and producer got up and left the room. Before leaving, producer De Silva said, "Think it over carefully, Ronald. We're not being too harsh on you. You don't know what the truly treacherous people in Hollywood are like. If you sign this contract within 3 days, the $3,000 is still yours. Business is business. If you sign, you'll still write scripts for me. Don't get angry, Ronald." "That's the game in Hollywood," Alan added, and the two left the room, leaving Ronald alone in his chair. Suddenly, with a loud bang, Ronald slammed his hand on the table. No, he couldn't easily give up his right to be credited. He couldn't surrender without a fight because of the other party's petty tricks. Ronald quickly ran back to the rehearsal room and found Antonia and Jean. Seeing his troubled expression, the two asked what was wrong. "I have a small disagreement with the director and producer, and I need a final copy of the script." Antonia didn't ask for details but handed him her script. "Take mine. Jean's copy has his phonetic symbols. We can share one." "Thank you both. I'll remember your help today." Ronald took the script, hurriedly drove home, and took stock of his hand. The final draft of the script, his various original manuscripts, and a few potential witnesses. Jean and Lucy, and perhaps Antonia, were willing to testify on his behalf. It was the dialogue he had devised. Ronald slumped down, putting down his pen. That was all. Perhaps his brain needed some alcohol to stimulate his concentration. Ronald opened the Jack Daniels he bought from the grocery store downstairs and poured himself a small glass. It tasted very strong. Ronald opened a drawer, rummaged around, and pulled out a bottle of honey. He scooped a little into the whiskey and mixed it in. The taste was much milder. The honey was a gift from Walter Murch, an editor at The Spectacular. A very experienced veteran in the industry. He wondered if he'd win an Oscar this year. He knew quite a few industry veterans. Why not ask their opinions? Ronald put down his glass, picked up his address book, and started flipping through it. "Gail? This is Ronald. Is Mr. Coleman in?" He closed a big deal and went on vacation with Julie and the kids. "Do you need him?" Ronald thought for a moment. Gail came from a wealthy family. Her father was an investor. Perhaps he could ask her for advice. "It's like this, Gail, I'm in a very embarrassing dispute." Ronald told Gail the whole story over the phone. Sigh, "Ronald, you were too careless. Starting to write a script based on just a verbal promise. Not every boss is like Roger. If you were a member of the Writers Guild, you could apply for arbitration and let the guild stand up for you. The guild's arbitration result is binding. It's a pity you're a member of the Directors Guild. Can I go through legal proceedings?" Ronald remembered his angry words about suing. Not very likely. The legal departments of the 8 major studios are very powerful. They cooperate with top law firms in Los Angeles. Even if you hire a top law firm on the East Coast, they won't be as familiar with entertainment industry legal cases as they are. You'll most likely still lose. Besides, the fees of top law firms, I understand. I still want to try. Can you give me some phone numbers for law firms that handle intellectual property? I'll consult them first. Okay, I have the phone numbers of a few East Coast law firms specializing in the entertainment industry. Hold on a moment. Pavia and Hackett, Keith and Whiteman, Kirkland and Peterson. Okay, thank you. Should I call first? Yes, I've never been to a law firm before. In your situation, you'll likely be stopped by the secretary if you call. I think you should go to the front desk and ask. Maybe your lawyer will be interested in your case. But don't get your hopes up too high. Also, I'll tell Roger about you when he gets back." At 3 p.m., Ronald was stopped again at the front desk of the last law firm, Kirkland and Peterson. Gail was right. The firm had absolutely no interest in a young man like him who wasn't a member of the Writers Guild but wanted to fight against the 8 major Hollywood studios. "I just want to talk to a lawyer. I can pay a consultation fee. Sorry, we only accept clients with appointments. Our lawyers are very busy." The receptionist stopped him from wasting the lawyer's valuable time. "Kate, what's going on?" A middle-aged man wearing glasses stepped out of the elevator. "Mr. Peterson, This gentleman walked straight into the firm without an appointment. He insists on speaking with a lawyer. It's about a script credit dispute. He's not a union member, and it's an MGM film, the receptionist quickly summarized. Hello, I'm Peterson, the naming partner at the firm. How about this? I'll give you some free advice. After that, please don't bother me at the front desk. How about that? Ronald gestured for him to continue. Take the $3,000, consider it a loss, a learning experience. That's not even enough to hire one of our senior lawyers. Even a fresh law school graduate charges $250 per hour for consultations. Lawyer fees are payable regardless of the outcome. Your chances of winning are slim. No, this case won't even go to court. The opposing lawyer will likely have the judge dismiss the case due to insufficient evidence. Are you satisfied with my free advice? Peterson said. Even lawyers sometimes need to show some kindness. My aunt always said not to trust free advice from strangers. I'll consult a lawyer who charges fees. Happy National Day holiday everyone. Today is double the monthly votes, so please vote. Thank you. Chapter 77 Lindsay Dahl's Strategy. Ronald flipped through his business card book and contact list again, searching for someone who could help him. He still wanted to consult a qualified lawyer. As a young man in New York with no connections, dealing with problems was always painful. If all else failed, he could only try his luck with law firms in the phone book. The business card he found was for Eddie, an agent introduced by casting director Julia Taylor. He had spoken with him once and remembered him as a rare honest person in the entertainment industry. He had a lot of connections and had signed many low-budget actors and models. Maybe he could ask him for connections. Eddie? This is Ronald Lee. Do you remember me? I need some legal advice. Do you know any lawyers in the entertainment industry or intellectual property? Yes, not the expensive kind. I have a lawyer friend I grew up with. He's Jewish, named Bobby Donnell. You can try contacting him. Ronald stood in front of the unassuming law firm. It seemed only a fluorescent light was on inside, and the entrance was dark. After confirming the name on the doorplate, Robert Donnell and Colleagues Law Firm, Ronald pushed open the door and entered. Hello, I'd like to consult with attorney Bobby Donnell about a screenplay credit dispute. Eddie recommended me. I tried calling beforehand, but I couldn't get through, so I had to come in person. The receptionist, a young black woman, greeted Ronald. Oh, Bella's doing maintenance on the phone lines, so the lines are temporarily down. Attorney Bobby is in court. What can I do for you? We have two senior attorneys here, Eugene Young and Elena Frutt, who can assist you. I have a screenplay credit dispute and need some advice. Ronald was somewhat suspicious. Could it be that Bell had cut off his phone because he hadn't paid the bill? And why was it so dark here, with only one light on? What exactly happened? Could you tell me first? I also graduated from law school and am currently studying for my bar exam. Ronald looked at the receptionist. Okay, my name is Ronald Lee. The black receptionist, Rebecca, extended her hand and shook his. I work on the set of MGM's Hot Lunch. I reached a verbal agreement with the director, but in the end, they didn't credit me. This is some evidence I've collected. This is the final draft of the script. This is my original draft, and these are the possible witnesses. Mr. Lee, you're one of the best prepared clients in our firm, a model client. I previously contacted Kirkland and Peterson, and they told me it was hopeless. But I'm not giving up and want to try another lawyer. I can afford the consultation fee. I have a full-time job as a portrait photographer. The receptionist, seeing how young Ronald was, seemed a little hesitant about whether he could afford the consultation fee. Ronald quickly assured her he could pay and handed over his business card. Okay, I'll ask Attorney Frutt and Attorney Yang if they're available to speak with you. The receptionist, considering the consultation fee, went into the room to call the lawyers. I have to go to court, said a plump white woman. Attorney Frutt slung his bag over his shoulder and left. Peterson's people said it's hopeless? A verbal agreement, not a union member. Tell him not to waste his money. I have to deal with that intentional homicide case. The tall black lawyer, Eugene Yang, told the receptionist. I'm free right now. I've been here for 2 months. Always doing research and assisting you. I should take on my own case, a young white female lawyer said, taking the business card from the receptionist and indicating she was willing to take the consultation. Ronald Lee, audition portrait photographer. I'm a full-fledged lawyer in the firm. My name is Lindsay Dahl. You're consulting about a screenplay authorship dispute, right? Ronald sat in the conference room chair, looking at the other man. Attorney Doll was young, with a baby face and two cute little bunny teeth. He was quite pretty. However, he looked like he had just graduated from college. As a lawyer, was he a suitable person to consult? Lindsay seemed to sense Ronald's suspicion and handed him a business card. I graduated from Harvard Law School and passed the New York State Bar exam on my first try. You can completely trust my professional competence. I'm sorry, Attorney Doll, I shouldn't have doubted you. Ronald took the business card. The Harvard emblem and the lawyer's title on it dispelled his doubts. If you have no objections, we can begin. My consultation fee is $150 per hour. Lindsay pressed the lawyer's timer. After listening to Ronald's accountant checking all the documents, Attorney Lindsay Doll frowned, picked up a yellow pencil, and tapped the paper with the eraser at the other end. I must say you did something careless, Mr. Lee. Verbal agreements have little legal binding force. It all depends on the client's performance. I was naive. I've never dealt with people from big studios before. Why didn't you get the Writers Guild to arbitrate for you? As far as I know, as long as you have the original manuscript, the arbitration is relatively fair, and the result is binding. The production company has no choice but to accept it. I haven't joined the Writers Guild yet. It was because the director promised to credit me on the script that I agreed to revise it for free so I could use it to apply for Writers Guild membership. I see. Then Peterson's advice makes sense. What? You're also suggesting I give up my credit? It's too early to say that now, but there's something I don't understand. Why don't they want you credited? As far as I know, a film can have a maximum of 3 screenwriters credited, but there's only one on the script, the lawyer asked. The director said they signed an exclusive credit agreement with the screenwriters. This isn't normal. I need to check relevant cases. The lawyer got up and went to the library to look up relevant cases from previous years. After a while, lawyer Lindsay Doll returned to the meeting room with a notebook. I found it. Her blonde hair was neatly tied back, and her blue eyes shone with excitement. The screenwriting for the film is commission work. The producer has a story and commissions the screenwriter to write the script. In that case, the copyright of the script belongs to the producer. He has the right to decide whether or not to include you, who has made more than a third of the script revisions, in the credits. The problem is that he signed that exclusive agreement. He has no reason to sign it. You mean, the producer is lying to me again? No, what I mean is that this exclusive agreement is very unreasonable. The producer must have received something in return for giving up this exclusive right. I'm a little confused, Miss Doll. Well, Lindsay Doll wrote 2 lines in pencil on a notebook and turned it to show Ronald. Story by screenplay by these 2 ways of attribution are 2 different concepts in Hollywood, you know. Yes, story refers to the person who came up with a core story concept, and screenplay refers to the person who actually wrote the script. Lindsay wrote another line, written by equals story plus script if you're credited as written. That's the highest level of attribution, meaning both the story and the script are from the same person. Only in this case is the screenwriter credited to only one person. Ronald nodded in understanding. But this is clearly a script where the producer came up with a story and hired a screenwriter to complete it. The screenwriter just completed a commissioned creative task. Logically, the attribution for this script should be like this. Lindsay Doll wrote 2 more lines on the notebook. Story, David Da Silva. Screenplay, Christopher Gore. But why is the script only credited to this screenwriter? Original screenplay, Christopher Gore. Attorney Lindsay Doll pointed to the words on the screenplay cover, her eyes gleaming as she looked at Ronald. This? Maybe the producer doesn't care about credit. Impossible. A producer wouldn't willingly give up any opportunity that brings them income and fame unless they have a greater benefit. Look here again. The lawyer pointed to the screenplay cover again. Ronald leaned forward slightly and read aloud. Original screenplay. Yes, original screenplay isn't a common way to label screenplays. It's an Oscar nomination designation. Maybe the producer traded the exclusive Oscar nomination for some benefit from the screenwriter. For example, a screenplay transfer fee far below market value. The lawyer tossed her pencil on the table, drawing her conclusion. Your reasoning makes a lot of sense, Ms. Doll. You've convinced me. But I still have a question. Are they really that confident this film will get an Oscar nomination? That's beyond my scope of consultation. I'm just a lawyer. I can only analyze the legal aspects of the contract for you. I don't understand the artistic tastes of Hollywood and the Oscars. Lindsay Doll waved her hand. This might be your breakthrough, Mr. Lee. If my guess is true, then you'll have a card in your hand that can help you turn the tide. Turn the tide. First, you need to separate the producer and the director. Right now, Their interests are aligned. The producer doesn't want the hassle of revising the contract with the original author, and the director wants you to sign as soon as possible to help him finalize the script. We play this card to confuse their interests. As long as one of them feels that the benefits of resolving your authorship issue outweigh the hassle of revising the contract with the original author, they will help us persuade the other. Ronald jotted down the lawyer's strategy in his notebook and thought for a moment. I have another problem. The producer said they have MGM's legal counsel. I think if I follow your strategy and checkmate the producer, he will definitely hire a lawyer to handle it. And then there's the contract issue. I'm afraid they'll trap me in the contract again. I can accept your employment. The contract negotiation and review services, plus my hourly rate, will be $850. The female lawyer shifted her chair slightly forward, her blue eyes fixed on Ronald. My portrait studio still has some income. I can afford your price. Then it's a deal. I'll wait for your call. The lawyer, Lindsay Dole, stood up and shook hands with Ronald. You can go to Rebecca to sign the service contract. Satisfied with paying the $150 consultation fee, Ronald and Lindsay Dole exchanged phone numbers and left the law firm. They agreed that if negotiations with a producer progressed and legal intervention was needed, they would call her. Yay! Inside the law firm, Lindsay Dole hugged Rebecca at the reception, pulling out the $150 consultation fee Ronald had just paid. Quickly used this to pay the phone bill and get Belle to restore the phone. It's been too much of a delay. Chapter 78 General. Miss Lindsay Dole's strategy was brilliant, but it carried the risk of being wrong. Ronald thought about it all night and finally decided to go for it. The worst outcome was losing $3,000 and the chance to be credited. Compared to a shortcut to his directorial dream, no risk was too great to take. Ronald first called producer David De Silva. David? This is Ronald. Yes, I've thought it through. This definitely needs a solution. Good, little Ronnie, you've finally matured. I'll arrange a time for you, Alan, and me to sit down and sign the script doctor agreement. No, I want to talk to you first. I don't trust Alan. His promises to me are like farts. It would be best to bring the production lawyer too, David. I hope to resolve this once and for all. No problem, 4 p.m. today. See you then. Ronald pulled out his phone book again, found the Writers Guild of the West's number, and dialed. Hello, I'd like to get the contact information for an author. Christopher Gore. Yes. Holding the slip of paper with Christopher Gore's contact information, Ronald closed his eyes again, mentally reviewing his planned strategy twice. Off he went. This is Mickey Cantor, a lawyer from the Los Angeles law firm Manett & Phelps & Phillips. He's a senior lawyer hired by the MGM president and is currently on a business trip in New York. I asked him to help me revise your contract. Producer David De Silva introduced a middle-aged man in a suit across from him. Like his name, Mickey Cantor had cunning eyes and prominent ears. His gray eyes were sizing Ronald up and down. Hello, I'm Mickey. He proactively extended his hand to shake Ronald's. I was curious after hearing about you from David and wanted to meet this bold young man. I hope I haven't disappointed you, Mr. Cantor. Not at all. Just call me Mickey, a senior lawyer hired by the MGM president. This made today's negotiations much more advantageous. Ronald welcomed this unexpected turn of events. Let's get this settled quickly, Ronnie. Producer De Silva was also pleased and handed over a contract. It's still what we agreed on, $3,000, plus your voluntary relinquishment of credit, and all the related rights. Hearing the latter part, all the related rights, Ronald was even more convinced that the lawyer's judgment was correct. He gently placed the contract aside. David, I want to talk to you about the credit issue first. Hey, what's going on? Don't waste everyone's time. On the contrary, I'll save you a lot of time. Ronald glanced at the lawyer, Mickey, who seemed quite curious about the unexpected development. This is the Writers Guild's credit rules. I got the latest copy from the lawyer, Ronald said, taking out 2 copies and handing them to the producer and lawyer across the table. He took the other copy for himself and began to read. Story credits go to anyone who first proposes the smallest complete story, or first writes the complete outline. Screenplay credits go to any writer who personally wrote the drafts or scenes included in the final version of the film, with a maximum of 3 writers. Original screenplay is awarded to the screenwriter who wrote the most outstanding original screenplay of the year. Oh, wait, that's the Oscar nomination criteria. Ronald lightly vaulted over. Checkmate. David Da Silva's expression shifted from initial delight to annoyance, and now to surprise. Here's a contact number from the Writers Guild of the West, belonging to Christopher Gore. If you'd like, David, we can call him together and ask him what he thinks about this typo." Ronald reached out and lightly tapped the words "original screenplay" on the screenplay cover. "Enough." David da Silva stood up, stopping Ronald from continuing. "Mickey, please give Ronald and me some private time." Lawyer Mickey Cantor stared at David for a while with his gray eyes, and Ronald, as an outsider, could sense the tense atmosphere. Then he looked at Ronald, suddenly smiled, and said, "Ronald, this house is yours now." Then he walked out the door and closed it behind him. "What are you trying to do, Ronald?" Mitch is the lawyer personally hired by the MGM president. "Are you trying to embarrass me by saying these things in front of him?" "David, I didn't even know who he was before I came here. Actually, I have no ill intentions. I just want my credit back. Of course, I don't intend to take stories or writing that aren't mine. I just want to be credited as a screenwriter. After all, I wrote more than a third of the key plot. I deserve it, don't I?" "How did you find out about Christopher's deal with me? Did Chris tell you?" "No, but I have my own channels. I'm not entirely a newcomer to Hollywood." "Alright, I'll renegotiate with Chris. Giving you screenwriting credit isn't a big problem." Ronald smiled slightly. The benefits of resolving this problem now outweighed the other one. "But Alan is involved in this too. There's another clause in our deal. Alan can freely change Christopher's script, on the condition that only Christopher is credited. If I renegotiate the contract with Chris, he won't be able to keep this from us. We have to work together to convince him to credit you." Ronald, the lawyer's assessment was correct. Now the producer was on his side. "You know he still has some reservations about you because of what happened last time." Let me talk to Alan first, Ronnie," the producer said to Ronald. Director Alan Parker disagreed with crediting Ronald. "Can you guarantee Christopher Gore won't tell anyone? Back then, you bought the script from Christopher Gore for $5,000 and resold it to MGM for $40,000. I'm fed up with this. Let's not drag this out any longer. Let's resolve this." "I'll talk to Chris." The producer wanted to resolve the matter quickly, even offering to personally subsidize part of the money for the original author. "You know, there's actually another solution. Ronald's scenes are only a little over a third of the way through. What if they're less than a third? Then even the Writers Guild won't support his credit. You want to, have you forgotten? I'm a screenwriter too." The two of them took apart a script, removed 2 pages of Ronald's scenes, and then Alan typed in 2 pages of his own trad. They rebound the script and returned to the room to negotiate with Ronald. "This is the latest script approved by the director, Ronald." Producer David da Silva regained his composure. "According to our statistics, you contributed less than a third of the script, so you can't be credited." The Queen moved from the diagonal and captured the knight, checkmating. Ronald took the script and flipped through it. It was his latest version, printed on a blue card, and it was missing 2 pages, making it exactly less than a third. "But this is the final version." Ronald picked up his script and pointed to the words on the cover, saying to them, "My lawyer told me this has legal significance and it's the lawyer's job." The producer opened the door, letting in lawyer Mitch Cantor. Mitch gestured for them to leave the room first. "Let me speak with Ronald alone." "Actually, I admire you, Ronald," Mitch said, staring at him. Ronald felt uncomfortable being stared at by those gray eyes. "What do you mean, Mickey? You're a newcomer, not even 20 yet, and you've managed to find and exploit a loophole between the director and producer, squeezing in to turn things around. But your luck is still a bit lacking. On set, if the director and producer team up to stop you, you're unlikely to win. What if I insist on filing a lawsuit?" Mickey smiled. "Let me do the math for you, Ronnie. Can I call you Ronnie? You'll get $3,000 from this script doctor contract. If you hire a lawyer specializing in entertainment copyright cases, even if he's a recent college graduate and fresh out of college, his hourly rate is $250. I only pay $150. Ronald thought to himself. There are court fees, lawyers' fees for preparing materials, and court appearance fees. The case might take several months to a year to process. If you're lucky enough to win, MGM will definitely appeal, and you'll have to go through all the procedures again. 2 years later, you might still not get a single dollar and lose your credit. Why not take this hard-earned $3,000 and make good use of these 1 or 2 years to do what you should be doing? In 1 or 2 years, you can write several screenplays. Who knows if one of them will be approved, made into a movie, and help you accumulate enough points to apply for the Writers Guild. Ronald felt that what lawyer Mitch Cantor said wasn't unreasonable. But ultimately, he was the one who had been deceived in this matter. Think it over carefully. 2 years will pass quickly. I'll stay in New York for 2 more days. As long as you agree before 5 p.m. tomorrow, I can guarantee that the contract I give you will be valid. No one can infringe on your interests. After saying that, Mitch patted Ronald on the shoulder and walked out. Disappointed, Ronald also walked out of the room. Outside were Jean, Antonia, and the black woman Lucy. What happened, Ronnie? Why are they all saying the director won't let you be credited in the script? Jean asked. You're right, I have some disagreements with the director and producers, and we are still working on it. Hey, you're the one who got me into this project. I'll always be grateful. How would you like us to support you? Jean said. Ronald glanced at Lucy and Antonia. Actually, he had another option, to get his own actors to strike. But that would involve others, and it was too difficult. Don't be impulsive, Jean. I just have a disagreement with them about the credits. They'll still pay me. You've got a rare opportunity. After this movie, you can join the Screen Actors Guild, and your future will be brighter. I'm already a guild member. We can. Antonia interrupted. No, Ronald interrupted hastily. Don't say that, Antonia. This film is a golden opportunity for everyone. Don't risk it lightly. I appreciate you all, but things aren't that bad yet. After persuading the 3 actors to leave, Ronald returned home and immediately called his lawyer, Lindsay Dahl. Lindsay, this is Ronald. Things are going very badly, and I'm afraid I have to prepare for the worst. Please vote with your monthly tickets. Thank you everyone. Chapter 79 Law and Business. Okay, that's settled then. If they still don't budge by tomorrow, I'll take legal action and send them a lawyer's letter first. After discussing the matter for over an hour on the phone with lawyer Lindsay Dahl, Alan Parker's actions were legally impeccable. Industry union rules are respected by law. Less than a third of the changes can be omitted from the credits. Of course, Ronald could argue that he wrote a more important part of the plot, but that would require the Writers Guild to intervene in arbitration. This brings us back to the old catch-22 problem. Without Writers Guild membership, one cannot apply for arbitration regarding credit disputes. Joining the Writers Guild requires having a screenplay credited for a released film. The two decided to resort to legal action. Lawyer Lindsay Dahl explained the necessary preparations, evidence, and witnesses for the lawsuit. The lawyer said the chances of winning were slim. Ronald's most realistic goal was to force MGM to settle out of court. This kind of script-stealing scandal would be dug up and sensationalized by gossip media when the film was released, and if the audience's negative reaction was strong, it might force the studio to back down. For example, director Michael Cimino, nicknamed Fat Boy, recently had a falling out with Dalek Washburn, the screenwriter of The Deer Hunter. Cimino claimed Washburn's initial draft was terrible and that he completely rewrote it. Washburn, in turn, argued that Cimino had only changed a few lines of dialogue and was trying to claim the script as his own. The controversy erupted when The Deer Hunter was released, and the distributor, Universal, quickly reached an understanding with the Writers Guild, awarding the screenwriting credits to Washburn. Ronald and his lawyer were pinning their hopes on a similar outcome. However, this approach had significant side effects, leaving Ronald hesitant. Completely offending the director and producer was out of the question. MGM would blacklist them, and other major studios would become aware of their glorious deeds. Perhaps sending a lawyer's letter first would suffice, and they could see the other party's reaction. If it could be resolved on their own, it would be better to avoid going to court. Ring ring ring, the phone rang. Hello, this is Ronald. Ronnie? This is Roger Coleman. Gail told me about you. How did things turn out like this? Ronald, who was deep in thought, received a call from Roger Coleman. He explained the whole story to Roger Coleman, his attempt to overpower the producer, his near-successful attempt but being retaliated against by the director, and the legal action he was planning to take. Are you really going to take legal action? I'm still undecided. My lawyer and the opposing lawyer both tell me the chances of winning are slim. I'm hoping the studio will generate negative publicity when the film is released, forcing them to back down, and then? You'll just take that script with your name on it and be permanently kicked out of the film industry? Lock it up in your bookcase at home? And when you're old, tell your grandchildren, Grandpa used to have the chance to direct movies too. I admire your commercial acumen in discovering the potential of New York midnight movies. But your plan to resort to legal action is a bit disappointing, Ronnie. I thought you could find a better way. "What should I do, Mr. Coleman?" Ronald immediately asked for advice. "Let me tell you some basic facts about lawyers, Ronnie. Lawyers don't make money from winning or losing cases, they make money from litigation. As long as you're in court, they make money. So, all things considered, they always tend to let you resolve issues through a legal means, but business people don't think that way, you know? 10 years after World War II, I was making films for the American International Film Distribution Company. I never signed contracts with them, we just shook hands. Even if it was agreed upon, we kept our promises afterwards. Do you know why? Because people were more honest back then. Haha, of course not. Because back then, those negotiating contracts were self-made business owners. Unlike professional managers today, business cooperation is based on mutual benefit. The role of a lawyer is simply to solidify this mutually beneficial cooperation in legal form. As long as there is mutual benefit, why change the initial promise? In that slower-paced era, whether there was a contract or not didn't make a big difference. You're a business-minded person. The idea of midnight theaters is excellent. In the future, don't only look at things from one perspective. I understand, Mr. Coleman. Thank you. Ronald felt that his perspective had indeed been somewhat limited. The Eastern sage Confucius once said, when looking at a problem, grasp the principal contradiction. Back then, to make On with the Wind, several rival studios even joined forces, contributing their stars to complete this masterpiece. The key was that everyone recognized the film would be a huge success. As long as there's an expectation of increased profits, even conflicting parties will bridge their differences. With shared interests, there's no fear of non-cooperation. Of course, legal means are important, but they're mainly used against unscrupulous individuals or to minimize losses afterward. After hanging up with Roger Coleman, Ronald began to re-examine the script's credit issue. The producers and director were unwilling to change the contract to credit him for 2 reasons. 1. His script wasn't valuable enough to boost the film's box office and artistic achievement. 2. He lacked union support. Dealing with him was less troublesome than dealing with the original screenwriter, union member Christopher Gore. Attorney Lindsay Dole's strategy had already solved the second problem. The main obstacle now was director Alan Parker. If only his script could solve his artistic achievement problem and help him make a classic masterpiece. Ronald took out the script again and read it carefully. The problem still lay with Doris's scenes. Director Alan Parker seemed to subconsciously sense the contradictions in the character, so he constantly urged him to revise it. A shy singer who can't sing won't pass the entrance exam. Only an actor can be accepted based on appearance and physique. Ronald loaded paper onto his typewriter and started writing again, changing Doris's character. She was no longer the singer Barbra Streisand Jr., but the aspiring actress Jane Fonda Jr. During the entrance exam, Doris couldn't perform the script as originally planned, but her shy, anxious demeanor was very real, and her appearance and voice were quite good. The interviewers gave her a tentative placement, but she was fortunate enough to be admitted to the Performing Arts High School. While watching the midnight showing of the Rocky Horror Show with Latino boy Ralph Garcia, Doris was so moved by the audience's enthusiasm that she rushed onto the stage and joined in the performance. Her desire to perform finally overcame her shyness, and a true actress was born. After revising all of Doris's main scenes, the interview, the romance, the transformation, and so on, Ronald realized it was already 4 a.m. When you're really immersed in a role, you don't notice the passage of time. Having worked through most of the night, Ronald had already revised far more than a third of the total scenes, approaching half. This was mainly because Doris, like Coco, was a connecting figure linking multiple main characters. Several main characters in the acting department were driven by her storyline. He was in a relationship with a Latino boy Ralph and was also good friends with Montgomery, a student at Rocky. When Ralph made his stand-up comedy debut, Doris invited many students to support him. Montgomery's character was also able to come out publicly in acting class thanks to Doris's encouragement. Ronald poured himself another small glass of whiskey with honey to soothe his tired nerves. With this bombshell, he wasn't worried about director Alan's disapproval. Would that make Alan support him? However, he couldn't just show the script to the director directly. Alan had played a trick today, removing his own script and replacing it with 2 rewritten pages. If he showed it to him before finalizing the credits, Alan would definitely use the same trick again, taking his ideas, changing some details, and claiming it as his own. Ronald put down his glass and started rubbing his forehead again. The prolonged overwork had made his head throb. He couldn't let Alan see it beforehand, But he also needed Alan's recognition of the value of his work, something that could elevate his film artistically. What to do? Unless he found a middleman who shared the director's artistic vision and had no direct conflict of interest with either party. Ronald took out his contact list and business card book and began flipping through them one by one. He still didn't know enough people in the industry. Roger Corman was far away in Los Angeles, and Alan Parker might not even agree that his exploitation film mogul had any artistic vision. Eileen from the Stella Adler Center was just an acting coach, her opinion carried little weight. If only he knew an Oscar-winning director. Michael Cimino's fat face popped into his head. Never mind, Ronald waved it away. He'd ask Julia Taylor at the casting studio tomorrow. Unlike Margaret, she wasn't working for Hot Lunch anymore. And she was much more senior than Margaret, maybe the director would trust her judgment. Speaking of Hot Lunch, did he still have that snapshot of the adult film poster? Ronald found the snapshot Antonia had taken. This was another weapon he could use. This adult film of the same name would definitely drag down the box office. If he told the producers he should change the film's name to boost it, it was still the middleman problem. If he told them directly, the card would be nullified, but if he didn't, the producers wouldn't believe him. Where could he find a middleman that both sides could trust? Ronald fell asleep pondering this. Double monthly votes are available during the National Day holiday, so I'm asking for your votes, thank you. Chapter 80 Script Review. Ring 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 ring. Startled awake by the alarm clock he'd set 3 hours earlier, Ronald felt as if he were still floating in midair. The tension of the past 2 days and lack of sleep last night had left him feeling completely out of sorts. A scalding hot shower revived Ronald. Today would be another day of relentless work. He hadn't had time to call casting director Julia Taylor last night, so early this morning, Ronald drove to the casting studio. After greeting the burly black security guard, Ronald waited at the reception desk for Julia to appear. She's busy casting for her new film these past few days. She might not have time to talk to you, the receptionist reminded Ronald, seeing him arrive so early. When is she coming today? I only need 10 minutes is enough, Ronald said, having specifically extracted Doris's scenes from both versions of the script, just in case Julia didn't have time to read them. Then you'll have to wait, the receptionist said impatiently. This is a gift for you. Ronald took out a beautifully wrapped box of chocolates and handed it to her. He had bought it on the spur of the moment that morning, just to make the receptionist happy. Oh, is this from Belgium? I love it. The receptionist happily swept the chocolates into the drawer under the table. I'll let you in on a little secret. Julia has been having some problems with casting these past few days, and she's not in a good mood. So don't argue with her, just go along with what she says. Okay, thank you. Ronald chatted with a receptionist while waiting at the front desk. Good morning, Julia. The receptionist suddenly sat down, flashing a standard working woman smile. Morning. Ronald, you're here too. Julia walked over quickly, greeted him, and headed towards the meeting room. Julia, I need to ask you something. The receptionist gently pulled him from under the table. I need your help. Ronald didn't care about the details, he had to get to the point. I'm busy, wait for me a moment. Julia pushed open the door and went inside. From the moment the door opened, Ronald saw that some actors were already waiting inside. Audition starting so early, you're in for a while. It's been like this for the past 2 days. They start acting as soon as they go in, and each one takes at least an hour, the receptionist whispered to Ronald. Ronald glanced at his watch, he didn't have much time to waste that morning. Julia, I only need 10 minutes, Julia, it's urgent, could you? 2 hours had passed, and Ronald still hadn't managed to stop Julia. The second time, he tried to forcefully stop her, but Julia's stern gaze stopped him. After all, he still needed her help. If he still couldn't find a free moment, Ronald would have to try Eileen at the Stella Adler Acting Center. He didn't know if it was too late, he needed to find a place to make phone calls. Ronald, pacing anxiously outside the meeting room, sighed deeply. He still had no connections. He leaned against the wall, bumped his head against it twice, and then rested his head against it. Young man, you still managed to bump into a wall so well. Ronald looked up. It was the same strange man with the black-rimmed glasses who had explained emotional memory to him before. Ronald was speechless with embarrassment. Are you here to spy on auditions too? The man said softly. Don't make too much noise, or they'll hear you inside. Spy? Ronald followed the strange man's gaze. There was a small door in this wall of the audition room, with a transparent glass top. The strange man was behind the door, observing the auditioning actors from a distance. "Why are you spying here? You know, I'm not good at dealing with people. I get nervous in front of them, so I just secretly watch from here during auditions. I'll make a note of the suitable people and then tell Julia." The strange man lowered his voice and explained to Ronald. So he was the director of the new film Julia was working for. Ronald thought to himself. "But you seem perfectly normal talking to me, not at all like an introvert." Yes, I can talk non-stop with the right people, but I get scared around strangers. Last time you bumped into a wall, that was great, so I started talking to you. I feel like we're the same kind of people, both very observant. Are you a director? Yes, I am a director. And also a famous clarinetist in Manhattan. Could you take a look at my script and give me some feedback? Ronald handed over his rewritten Doris scenes. He was also a director, so he figured he could get this guy's opinion. Why not? This cast is really boring. The director and clarinetist adjusted his glasses, picked up Ronald's revised versions of Doris's script, and walked under the light to read them. That's great. I wasn't wrong, you have a keen eye. I've seen many shy musicians in the orchestra, but never a shy singer. This is great too, watching a midnight exploitation film, having your psychological barriers broken down by enthusiasm. Did you make this up or is it true? Do they really watch movies like this at midnight and then go up and act themselves? Oh, yes. They have a fan club. The most people have seen the Rocky Horror Show over 150 times. Over 150 times? I wish someone liked my movie that much. None of my fans have seen it that many times. Even critics only watch it once. I really envy this director in that respect. Even though his movies are garbage, I really hope my movies can receive such high praise from the public, but my audience is mostly intellectuals. The general public doesn't like them. The director and clarinetist began rambling to himself again. A film critic reviewed his movie? It seems his movie is good. Perhaps Alan Parker would agree with his assessment? If it's convenient for you, could you please provide some written feedback on my script? For some reason, I need an authoritative third-party opinion, sir. Do you have any other parts of the script? Sometimes excerpts from a script don't necessarily represent its true quality. Ronald quickly handed over the final version of the script he had gotten from Antonia, with his own writings marked on sticky notes. This part is very good, very good. Your writing is excellent, and your observation of life is very detailed. I told you we're the same kind of people. How did you write this dialogue about girls fighting over men? The darker the blackberry, the sweeter it tastes. A very interesting way of putting it. I feel you have a talent for comedy. Why don't you try revising my script next time? By the way, you can call me Woody. Woody Allen. Thank you, Mr. Woody Allen. My name is Ronald Lee. He shook hands with Woody Allen. Could you give me a third-party opinion? At this moment, Julia heard the commotion outside. After stopping the audition, she came out and saw Ronald bothering Woody Allen. Ronald, don't bother Woody. We're still auditioning. It's okay, Julia. Ronald is great. I'm reading his script. It's great. I'm not satisfied with any of these actors, Julia. Why not try Ronald? I feel he's good at hitting walls. Maybe he has acting talent. Are you serious? Julia looked at Ronald, not quite understanding what hitting walls well meant. Of course, he's a very natural actor. The headbutts are very natural. 100 times better than those affected actors, Woody Allen said, writing down his comments for Ronald's script. Ronald Lee's revisions made this script even better. They transformed Doris's character from mediocre to outstanding. I hope he can revise the dialogue in my script. Then, after thinking for a moment, he added, P.S. Ronald's acting is also very natural. We could consider casting him as the guy who bangs his head against the wall after failing his college interview. Signed, Woody Allen. He tore the comments out of his notebook, tucked them into the script, and handed it back to Ronald. Ronald, when would you like to audition for my new film? Julia will arrange it. I have something very important to do today. I don't have time for an audition. That's all right. I know how to find you. Ronald, Woody Allen winked at him. Julia, I apologize for interrupting your audition, but I have something very important to discuss. Ronald briefly described his predicament to Julia, hoping she could give him a neutral evaluation of his script. Ronnie, you're really funny. You already have Woody's evaluation. That's enough. Julia still took the script and quickly skimmed through it. Ronald looked at Woody, then back at Julia. Was this man some important figure? You don't not know Woody? He's the best director in New York. In 1977, he directed and starred in Annie Hall, beating George Lucas to win the Academy Awards for Best Original Screenplay and Best Director. Don't mention it. George just wasn't liked by the judges. Woody seemed a little shy when he heard the praise. Ronald looked at Woody in surprise. This small man was actually a two-time Oscar winner. His evaluation of his script was definitely impressive. I'm sorry, Mr. Allen, I didn't know who you were. I was busy making money in high school and didn't have much time to watch movies. Don't worry about that. Keep writing your screenplay, you'll succeed someday. Remember to come see me play at the Carlisle Hotel Bar sometime. I'll be there every Monday night with a New Orleans jazz band. Woody Allen winked at him again. Ronald apologized to Julia again, hugged her goodbye, grabbed his script, and headed straight out the door. He rushed to a phone booth, slipped in a few coins, and dialed Robert Donnell's law firm. Lindsay, please don't go to court. It connected. Is this Rebecca? This is Ronald. I'm looking for Miss Lindsay Dole. Please get her on the phone. Lindsay, it's me, Ronald. I've got a crucial testimony. We can try negotiating again. Are you at the firm? I'll come find you. Chapter 81 Bargaining. Ronald, you've surprised me. Lindsay looked at Ronald's comments on the script that he had given Woody Allen. I didn't expect you to have this trick up your sleeve. I think this time you can get the director to change his stance too. You think so too? Then let's go negotiate with them right away. Their lawyer said they need to leave the set at 5 p.m. today. Lindsay glanced at the clock on the wall. 12:30. Okay, we'll leave right away. David, this is my lawyer, Ms. Lindsay Dole. Please get the director and lawyer Mitch Cantor here. We'll resolve this afternoon. Ronald introduced a lawyer to the producer and requested a meeting. David De Silva looked at him for a long time. Hopefully, nothing unexpected will happen this time. He then instructed his assistant to invite the director and lawyer. After Director Allen and lawyer Mitch Cantor were seated, Ronald introduced a lawyer to them again. Let's get down to business. What is your client's attitude? Mitch Cantor looked Lindsay Dole up and down with his gray eyes again. My client wants to speak privately with Director Alan Parker for 5 minutes. Lindsay made the first motion. What are you doing? The producer snapped. It's just a private meeting, and I guarantee it will only have a positive impact on resolving the issue today, Ronald said. The producer whispered a few words to lawyer Mickey, then said to Ronald, all right, we'll give you 5 minutes. Hopefully, you won't try anything funny, and you, Attorney Dahl. Ronald nodded to the lawyer, who also left with him. So, what do you want, Ronald? If you think $3,000 isn't enough, I can add some more, Director Parker said. I rewrote the script for Doris, and this is the conclusion I got from someone's evaluation. Ronald handed over a photocopy of Woody Allen's note. What's this? Allen looked at it suspiciously. Director Woody Allen's evaluation of my Doris script. You know Woody? The director asked, somewhat surprised. Ronald shrugged. I'm not exactly a Hollywood newbie, really? You really found a solution to Doris's problem? Allen was still somewhat skeptical after reading the note. This is Woody Allen's feedback after reading my script. He's casting with Julia. If you don't believe me, you can call and ask. Allen stood up and went out to make the call. The producer and lawyer Mitch, seeing Allen quickly leave to make a call, were somewhat surprised and returned to the room to ask Ronald what he had been doing. Allen just went to confirm something. We'll just wait patiently. A short while later, Director Allen returned to the conference room. Ronald, I spoke with Julia, and she also gave your script a good review. Tell me, what do you want? I just want what I deserve. Ronald wanted to continue answering but was stopped by the lawyer. I'm Lindsay Dahl, Mr. Ronald Lee's lawyer. I think we can now discuss the details of the contract. Lawyer Lindsay Dahl handed Mitch Cantor a draft contract. Lawyer Mitch opened it and began to read. Also, I have a photograph here that can resolve a major potential box office problem for this film. If you're willing to sign with me, I can tell you right away, David. Ronald pulled out another envelope and waved it at the producer. What do you mean? What potential problem could the film have? I can't tell you now. You can choose not to believe me, David. He put the envelope away. The producer and director exchanged glances. I have no objection to Ronald being credited on the script. The director nodded. He can use the title of script for joint credit. This story belongs to the original author, Christopher Gore. I'll go call him. The producer got up and left. A short while later, producer De Silva returned to the conference room and nodded to lawyer Mickey to indicate that it was done. So he was prepared all along, Ronald thought to himself. Mickey handed over a piece of paper. My client agrees to allow your client to be credited on the script for Hot Lunch, in the following form. Ronald and the lawyer took it and saw 2 lines of text. Story, Christopher Gore screenplay. Christopher Gore and Ronald Lee. Attorney Lindsay Dole glanced at it, crossed out the end, and rewrote an in pencil. The Writers Guild's handbook clearly states, when 2 screenwriters are connected by and, they belong to the same team. When connected by and, they are independent editors. Our client clearly belongs to the latter, which better reflects his screenwriting ability. Mitch Cantor took back the paper. We have no objection. Looks like a deliberately set trap. Ronald and the attorney exchanged a glance. Your client has the right to be credited for the screenplay, but not for screenwriting awards, including Oscar nominations. Mitch Cantor then proposed the next clause. Since our client is one of the screenplay credited authors, he should have the corresponding rights when the film receives a screenwriting award nomination. No, Ronald, Christopher's condition for accepting the contract modification is that if the film wins an award, he wants to exclusively receive the honor of going on stage to accept it, producer De Silva interjected. This is not in accordance with industry practice and guild regulations, the attorney protested. Mickey Cantor watched the 2 sides arguing endlessly. How about this, he said, Ronald Lee has the right to be credited in the script. If he's nominated for an award, his name will be mentioned in the official announcement, but the production team won't provide him with an invitation to the awards ceremony. If he wins, he can't go on stage to accept the award either. That way, Christopher can still enjoy the honor alone. I need to make a call to confirm. In principle, there shouldn't be any problem, the producer said, going out to make another call. Your client voluntarily waives any cash compensation and any subsequent derivative. Wait, Lindsay interrupted Mickey. Our client previously received a $3,000 offer. That was the screenwriter doctor's offer, which your client has waived. No, our client is being credited based on the director's recognition of the excellence of the work. The offer should still be considered valid. Mickey and the producer exchanged a glance. We can agree to $3,000. No, according to industry practice, the price for revising a script should be equivalent to the script acquisition price, or 10 times the script options. Your client is not a member of the Writers Guild, but that doesn't affect the quality of his work. Authoritative directors and screenwriters in the industry have already affirmed its excellence. The lawyer was haggling with the opposing lawyer over Ronald's earnings. Ronald's mind had already wandered elsewhere. He was happy to be credited on the script and then join the Writers Guild. Director Allen's eyes gleamed, waiting to see the updated script after the negotiations. The producer walked in from outside and confirmed with Mickey that the original author, Christopher, had agreed to the arrangements regarding the awards. He looked slightly agitated, perhaps facing some financial loss. $40,000 is impossible, Mitch's lawyer objected. You can submit a counter-offer, Lindsay said. Mitch whispered a few words to the producer, wrote a number on a piece of paper, and handed it to the lawyer. It's $5,000, Lindsay said, showing the paper to Ronald before whispering in his ear. I suggest rejecting it. Ronald nodded. We believe that a script Woody Allen considers excellent deserves at least that much. Lindsay wrote down $25,000, folded it, and handed it over. After several rounds of back and forth, they finally settled on $8,000. Lindsay Dole showed Ronald the number and whispered again in his ear, I think it's acceptable. Ronald nodded in agreement. Mitch went out to prepare the formal contract. A moment later, producer David De Silva and Ronald signed the contract on behalf of both parties. Lindsay Dole reviewed it and approved. Ronald took out his script and handed it to the director. So the problem was with the entrance interview, changing Doris from the music department to the acting department, the Rocky Horror Show? That's a natural transition, making Doris's motivation to overcome her shyness more reasonable. Woody was right, you really did transform Doris from mediocre to outstanding. Director Alan Parker finished reading the script and gave Ronald a deep look. What about mine? The producer held out his hand, indicating that Ronald could hand over the potential box office risk. These are photos I took at a midnight cinema. Someone's copying Alan Parker's work, making an adult film also called Hot Lunch. The director's name is A.L. Parker, which easily makes you a suspect. Ronald handed over the poster photo taken by Antonia. Director Parker picked up the photo, looked at it, and angrily threw it back on the table. This is outrageous. I'm going to find out who did this. What? Why didn't MGM lock in his title at the Western Film Festival in Las Vegas in April? Producer De Silva asked Mickey lawyer in surprise. Mickey frowned. There might be some problems with the secretaries at headquarters. I'll report this to the president when I get back. I'll call him too. But anyway, we need to consider changing the title. The film has already been shown in New York theaters, and the impact has been made. The producer started scratching his dwindling hair. Let's think about this later. Let's finish today's work, Mickey said. Soon, Ronald received an $8,000 check in an envelope. After confirming it was correct, he stood up and shook hands with each person. Alan, the rules of Hollywood, don't hurt feelings, don't hurt feelings. Director Alan Parker shook his hand. David, hopefully changing the title will increase the box office. You're very good, Ronald. Next was producer David De Silva. Mickey, maybe we don't need to wait a year or two, we can do it now. You've impressed me again, Ronald. And you, Attorney Dole. Mickey Cantor shook hands with them goodbye. Ronald, are you alright? Jean, Antonia, and Lucy surrounded Ronald as he walked out of the meeting room. No, it went well. The director and producer agreed to my request. They're both good people. Ronald looked tired and sat down on the bench. Let me explain. Ronald's a bit tired. Let him rest for a bit. Lindsay Dahl pulled the three actors aside. So Ronald is the screenwriter for the movie? Jean asked. Yes, you could say that, the lawyer replied. Oh, man, I knew he was amazing. He's alright now. Jean and Lucy danced rhythmically all the way back to the rehearsal room. The lawyer turned around. Antonio was by the bench, watching Ronald dozing off with his eyes closed. She took 2 steps forward and whispered to Antonia, he looks kind of handsome even when he's asleep. Yeah. Antonio reached out her right hand and gently touched his eyelashes. Seeing Ronald seem a little ticklish and sniffle, Antonia and Lindsay Dahl couldn't help but laugh. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82 Holiday. Ronald tossed a 25-cent coin into the fare box. He passed through the turnstile and boarded the orange Staten Island ferry, the John F. Kennedy. Having finalized the signed contract, Ronald decided to return to Staten Island for a vacation to relax his tense nerves. Sitting on the worn-out wooden bench in his cabin, he recalled the evening he'd taken the lawyer to dinner. At the Little Italy Pizzeria, Ronald had placed 2 checks on the table and pushed them towards Ms. Lindsay Dole. One for $850, the other for $1,000. I remember our agreement was $850, the lawyer said. Ronald, starving after a long day, was stuffing a piece of devil's pizza into his mouth. This pizza, with Italian salami, tasted good and was more suitable for meat lovers. However, Ronald had added a little too much chili oil and quickly grabbed the Coke to gulp it down. Hiss. How you? Ronald put down his drink. Our agreement was $850, but you helped me get extra compensation. A contract is a contract. We agreed on $850. You just need to pay me according to the contract. If you are satisfied with my service, you can hire me as your personal lawyer in the future. If you have other contracts to review, I can provide services for you at any time. Lindsay pushed the $1,000 check back. No, that's not what I meant. Ronald waved his hand and took another big gulp of cola. Not long ago, my former boss told me that a contract is simply a legal document that fixes the mutually beneficial aspects of a business deal. You secured the benefits I deserved from my verbal agreement, far exceeding my expectations. I'd like to have you handle my legal affairs from now on. My intuition tells me that although you're new, you're very capable, and the opposing lawyer, Mitch Cantor, also admires you. I believe you'll quickly rise to prominence in the New York legal profession. This $1,000 is a retainer payment. You'll soon be very busy with your legal work, and your clients will be far more sophisticated than mine. I hope you'll still be available to help me when I need it. Okay, thank you for your kind words. The lawyer thought for a moment and accepted the check. The retainer payment was calculated based on the duration of future services, with adjustments made for any overpayment or underpayment. Having just graduated from university, she did need some money for clothes. I'll send you the bill. The two continued their meal. By the way, will you be going to the film set again? If possible, I'd like to see how movies are made. Ronald shook his head. The director doesn't like me, although I told him it's not a big deal. But I've already gotten what I wanted, and I don't want to appear in front of him anymore. But if you want to watch the filming, I can introduce you to Antonia. She's one of the lead actresses and can issue visitor passes. No need, I already know her. I have her contact information, the lawyer said with a smile. Do you smoke? What? Ronald's thoughts were interrupted. I asked you if you smoke. It was a woman dressed like an office worker next to him, holding a pack of cigarettes, knocking out a few, and offering Ronald one as well. I don't smoke, please help yourself, Ronald replied. The woman snapped on her lighter, lit her cigarette, took a deep drag, and exhaled a smoke. The woman looked to be in her early 30s, with overly heavy eyeshadow, bright lipstick, and her hair styled in a high ponytail with mousse, exuding a cheap perfume scent. Her blonde hair was dry and split, suggesting she was a hard-working employee who had no time for grooming, or perhaps she simply didn't have the money. Men's haircuts in New York were already outrageously expensive, so women's haircuts must be even more pricey. Ronald watched her take deep drags on her cigarette. At this time of day, the ferry from Manhattan to Staten Island was nearly empty. The ferry is practically empty in the morning. Every afternoon when I take the ferry back to Staten Island after get off work, it's packed, the woman said. Yes, the Staten Island ferry is a common route for many commuters. Ronald sensed that this woman wanted to talk to someone. Aren't you going to work today? You're taking the ferry back to the island this morning. I got fired. My boss is a bitch. Because of her mistake, we lost an important bond trading client, and she blamed it all on me, telling me to pack my things and get out. The woman threw her cigarette on the ground and stomped it out with her high heels. Oh, my shoes. Realizing what she'd done, she quickly bent down to change out of her high heels, carefully wrapped them up, and put on her sneakers from the bag. Sorry, the ferry is too dirty, and it's inconvenient to wear high heels when getting on and off. I usually change before leaving get off work every day. I didn't have time to think about it today. It seemed she opened up more in front of strangers, wanting to confide in them. That's really unfortunate. There are just too many selfish bosses these days. Yeah, Wall Street always has these bitches and bastards. What are you planning to do? I'll try the job placement agency again. If that doesn't work, I'll just have to go back to my hometown, Staten Island, and work as a waitress. That's alright. My aunt works as a waitress. Most of the customers on the island are from my hometown. Although the tips aren't as good as in Manhattan, there's less shady stuff. Ronald smiled. Thank you. My name is Teresa Kate, the woman introduced herself, extending her hand. Ronald Lee. They shook hands, and Ronald noticed that her fingers were stained yellow from cigarette smoke. Are you from Staten Island too? Teresa asked. Yes, Tutwill at the southern end of the island. I grew up there too. I even danced ballet when I was little. I went to work in Manhattan's financial district for my American dream, but unfortunately, I only have a high school diploma. I could only get a secretarial job through a job placement agency. I've been in Manhattan for 10 years and I'm still a secretary. Maybe I should go back to Tutwill and try my luck. Whoosh, the ferry sounded its horn and docked. After parting ways with his unemployed secretary, Ronald boarded the train and returned to his aunt's house for a vacation. Ronnie, how is it going on the film set? After resting at home for 3 days, his aunt took advantage of her free time to set up a chair in the yard and give Ronald a haircut. Not bad, I'll get a screenwriter's credit. That's great, but don't forget you're starting school in September. His aunt was more concerned about his own university studies. It's your parents' last wish. You must get your college degree. I will. Aunt Karen neatly trimmed the back of his hair and swept the stray hairs into the trash can. You should get a hairdresser to cut your hair from now on, Ronnie. His aunt ruffled Ronald's hair. It was fairly tidy. Aunt Karen, you did a great job cutting it. You always make me laugh, Ronnie. When are you going back to the set? I'm not going. My job is done. I'll be going to the casting studio more often to help them update the actors' audition photos. While his aunt and Donna were free, Ronald took the whole family to see the newly released High School Rock. The three went to the biggest theater in town. Backwards Staten Island had managed to import cheap films like High School Rock immediately. AWW, seeing the Ramones take over the high school and hold a live concert, the audience started clapping along to the rock rhythm in the movie. Then one audience member started stomping their feet, and immediately everyone joined in, shaking the theater. Ronald looked around. Most of the audience members reacting strongly were high school students and teenagers. Aunt Karen wasn't used to this noisy, exploitative film, but Donna seemed to enjoy it. Ronnie, was that you with a beard proposing over the phone? Donna whispered. Yes, I wore a fake mustache. I think you acted better than the main character, Tom. Why did Kate, that academic superstar, say you weren't her type? Donna began scrutinizing her role in the exploitation film. The film ended, and the lights in the theater came on. Ronald stood up, peering over the crowd at the screen, wanting to see his name in the credits. As the theme song from the Ramones Rock High played, the red cartoon-style subtitles slowly rose. Second group director, Jerry Zak. Second group director, Ronald V. Lee. Finally seeing his name on the screen, Ronald smiled and pulled Donna up. Let's go. No, your name is down there too, Ronnie, Donna said, pointing to the screen. Ronald looked up and saw his name again on a separate line in the credits. Special thanks, Joe Dent and Ronald V. Lee. What a surprise. Ronald happily watched the credits rise to the top and disappear. I also think you acted better than the male lead, Ronald, Aunt Karen agreed with Donna during dinner at the restaurant. Ha ha ha, Ronald laughed heartily. His family really liked him in the movie and were cheering him on. After the movie, Ronald continued to rest at home until Saturday morning when he took the early ferry to the casting studio to update the audition photos for their actors. Ronald, where have you been? Producer David De Silva has been looking for you everywhere. I tried calling your home phone but no one answered. Margaret scolded Ronald as soon as she saw him. What do they want? I've been on vacation on Staten Island for the past few days, Ronald said, puzzled. My deal with them is done, and director Alan has approved my script. You should still call the producer. He sounds very anxious. Chapter 83. Is Gene going to be fired? David, this is Ronald. Is there a problem with my contract? Ronald called producer David De Silva. No, that's no problem. I've already spoken to the higher-ups at MGM about the adult film of the same name, and I'm very grateful to you for that. I'm talking to you because of Gene. Gene? What happened to him? He smashed the lockers in the rehearsal room and is now threatening to quit the production. He's very emotional and has clashed with Alan. Alan has restarted casting for Leroy and wants to replace Gene. But we're already in the final rehearsals, less than 2 weeks before filming starts. Alan still hasn't finalized the actors for the two teachers, and if Gene is replaced again, filming will definitely be delayed. I can't communicate with Gene, and nobody in the crew is close to him. He usually only talks to Lucy and Antonia. Lucy is his kinsman and is on his side. After Antonia talked to Gene, she told me that only you can talk to him. Ronnie, you have to come and talk to Gene. This? But I'm not black. Okay, I'll talk to him on set. Gene Ray was someone he chose to join the cast, and he sided with him during the script conflict. If he could help him, he should. But why did Antonia say that only he could make a difference? Upon entering the Harlan High School set, Ronald saw a row of metal lockers outside the rehearsal room in a mess. These were usually used by the dancers to store their belongings, but now many were dented, the marks suggesting a large blunt object, like a fire extinguisher. Ronald saw a fire extinguisher in the corner, its paint chipped off. Where's Gene? Where is he? Ronald stopped an assistant. He's in his office talking to the producer about terminating his contract. Was it that serious? Ronald quickly walked to the office and knocked on the door. Come in, came the producer David's voice. Pushing open the door, he saw Gene sitting silently in his seat, the producer opposite him. Seeing Ronald enter, David quickly stood up. Okay, I'll let you talk to Ronald. I'll go out first. David gave Ronald a wink. Gene, what happened? I heard you're quitting the film. Ronald sat down next to him and said softly. The director disrespected my mother. He wants to kick her out and not let her stay on set. When did your mother arrive? Why doesn't the director let her stay? Ronald felt that a lot had happened in the past few days, so he asked for details. It turned out that Gene's mother, Joan, had come from Harlem to Midtown Manhattan a few days ago to see her son. She found that Gene was working very hard in the drama rehearsals, often rehearsing the same scene repeatedly all day. Seeing how hard her son was working, Gene's mother came to the set every day to take care of him. Actually, it wasn't like some white parents who were constantly taking care of him. Joan would only watch the rehearsals for 10 minutes at the beginning, then leave, and come back at noon to bring her son some fried chicken and a bottle of grape-flavored soda. She would come again in the evening and take the subway home with her son. She didn't interfere with the rehearsals much. For some reason, the director forbade Joan from appearing on set yesterday morning, accusing her of interfering with Jean's rehearsals and dragging down the entire crew. I can't stand his discrimination against us, Ronald. I can't stand it. My mother only comes to see me at rehearsals every day. She never stays longer. They just don't like seeing my mother among a bunch of white parents. From Jean's words, many actors' parents also drive their children to rehearsals, and the director disliked Joan, a poor black woman from Harlem, saying she was too conspicuous, so he wanted to get rid of her. What about the locker? Ronald asked. They called security to remove my mother, and I wouldn't let them touch her, so I grabbed a fire extinguisher to protect ourselves, so she smashed the locker? Ronald thought, it seems Jean is very angry that the crew wants to remove her mother. What did the producer say? He advised me to stay, finish filming the movie, and I'll become a star, then all the discrimination will disappear. Ronald thought, that's true. While Americans discriminate against black people, they are much more tolerant of black celebrities. So what do you think? I want to be famous too, Ronald. But I can't tolerate this blatant discrimination against our race. Also, my mother is my only family, and I can't stand by and watch her be kicked out. Okay, don't make a final decision yet. Let me talk to the director. It seems Jean still wants to stay, which makes things easier. As long as he finds out why director Allen wants to get rid of Joan, he can resolve that. However, director Allen isn't supposed to be racist. He's cast quite a few black characters in the film. Could it be that the parents of the other actors collectively pressured him? After reassuring Jean, Ronald left the producer's office. He thought for a moment and decided not to go directly to the director, but instead to go to the rehearsal room to find Antonia Franceschi to get some information first. Antonia, can you talk to me about Jean? After greeting the drama teacher, Ronald led Antonia out of the rehearsal room. I can't say too much. It involves the interests of many people. Antonia unusually didn't speak directly. Then what can you tell me? David said you sent him to me, so why did you ask me to talk to him? Ronald felt increasingly puzzled. Who hated Jean and his mother so much? I can only say that the director isn't a racist. I believe that, otherwise he wouldn't have included so many minorities in the script. Well, because you discovered Jean, he listens to you. Ronald, you need to talk to Jean's mother. Maybe it's best to let her go. It's better for everyone on set. Why? I live in Little Italy. I can't say. You know, Italian Americans in New York have to follow certain rules, and one of them is not to talk about internal matters with outsiders. What does this have to do with Italian Americans? Don't ask. I can't say. Seeing that he couldn't get any information, Ronald could only thank her. I haven't thanked you for your support last time. Antonia, it's okay. We all hope you stay on set. Okay, see you later, Antonia. I still have to deal with this. Ronald still didn't get anywhere, so he went to find producer David. David, does this have anything to do with the Italian community? The Italian community? When we chose this location for filming, we already made arrangements with the Italian gang. They were very supportive of the film, especially since we chose Antonia, who is Italian American, as the lead actress. The gang, Ronnie, you know, this area is Times Square, Italian territory. They control all those fireflies in the square. As a film producer, you have to manage these relationships. You have to talk to City Hall and the underground City Hall beforehand, otherwise problems will arise during filming. Okay, thanks for telling me all this. I'm getting more and more confused. Keep it up, Ronnie. I don't want to go through another round of auditions. I need to check on the two directors' auditions. Alan is still not satisfied with the current cast. After asking around, Ronald had no choice but to go to the director's room to see if he could find out anything new. Hi, Alan. It's me, Ronald. You're here. I've been busy these past few days, so I won't chat. That's why I'm here, director. David asked me to talk to Jean. Is Jean's mother, Joan, really that disruptive to rehearsals? If they're willing to obey your orders and Joan stops interfering, can you give Jean another chance? Ronald's mouth was dry as he spoke, glancing at a can of Coke on the table. Alan gestured for him to help himself. Ronald picked up the Coke and popped it open. Perhaps because it had been left at room temperature for a while, foam splattered out. Alan Parker sat smoking, looking somewhat anxious, and casually stubbed out his cigarette. If Joan came to rehearsals every day instead of wandering around, that would be a good thing, and I wouldn't kick her out. What do you mean by that? Chapter 84 Another kind of Coke. I didn't tell David, or Jean. This is Italian territory, you know what they do in Times Square. I thought Joan, you mean Jean's mother, Joan. Someone told me they saw her soliciting customers in the neighborhood, and at first I didn't pay attention. But later I got concrete information that her business was actually selling Coke. She was selling it to the extras and crew members on set, so yesterday I banned her from the set, selling Coca-Cola. Ronald held up his Coke. Not that Coke, it's a different kind of Coke. Alan Parker pressed his finger to his nose, making a gesture. What the FXCK? Ronald suddenly realized. No wonder Joan was wandering around the set and not watching her son's rehearsals, and no wonder the director wanted to kick her out. If she was selling here, there were hundreds of middle-class kids on set. Ronald immediately turned to find Jean. Jean, tell me the truth, is your mother, Joan, a dealer? Yeah, she's very influential. Everyone in my neighborhood in Harlem knows her. She's only been here a couple of days, and she's already made contact with the Italians, who gave her permission to sell her wares around Harlem High School. Anyway, Harlem High School closed down, so this area was deserted before, and there weren't any dealers there. Ronald rubbed his forehead. These Harlem black people seem to talk about it with great pride. But it's not surprising, under the influence of hippie culture, many people in the entertainment industry don't shy away from this. For black people, making money is something to boast about. I need to talk to your mother, okay? I'll take you to her. In a corner of the dilapidated playground of Harlem High School, Ronald and Jean found Joan. She was looking around at the passers-by on the path ahead, searching for potential buyers. Joan was a slender woman with a head of frizzy curly hair, exuding a powerful aura. It was clear she had received ballet training in her youth. Mom, this is Ronald, the one who picked me up for the film. Oh, so it's you, Ronald. You're so kind of you to see Jean's talent for dancing. I'm so grateful to you. I was a ballet dancer when I was young, and then I had Jean. He's very talented, isn't he? Look at his leg muscles. He was born to dance ballet. Jean's mother, Joan, hugged Ronald and began talking about her son's dance talent. Jean, you go to rehearsal first. I need to talk to your mother alone. Ronald quickly changed the subject. Doesn't Director Allen forbid you from selling merchandise around the set? Yes, he doesn't have the authority to do so. Anyway, if he doesn't let me sell, someone else will. I got through to the Italians because Jean is the lead in this movie. You know, they have a special fondness for movie stars, like John Travolta after he starred in Saturday Night Fever. Ronald realized that reasoning with them was pointless. Their values were completely different. Just as he was worrying about how to persuade Joan, he suddenly heard the name John Travolta. Joan, I'll take you somewhere. Ronald and Joan walked to a rundown old movie theater next to Harlem High School. It couldn't afford renovations, so it only showed popular movies and adult films from years ago, making a living from cheap print rentals. Right now, it was showing the 2-year-old hit musical Grease. Do you know who he is? Ronald deliberately pointed to the worn Grease poster on the wall. Of course, he's John Travolta, Joan replied. What if I told you your son, Jean, is the next Travolta? Would you believe me, really? But Travolta is the only male lead in Grease. My Jean is just one of 4. Joan couldn't believe it. Jean is also a lad. His character, Leroy, has relationships with both of the film's most beautiful female leads. He even gets one of them pregnant. That's the treatment of a lead. Ronald began to exaggerate the importance of Leroy's character. Joan's mouth dropped open. Is it true? He can really be the next Travolta. Alan's last film won an Oscar. Actually, it was Oliver Stone for Best Adapted Screenplay. I have to apologize to him. He'll make my son look like Travolta. I shouldn't have talked back to him. I've been sending Jean to ballet classes since he was little. He completely inherited his father's strength and my physique. He's the kind of ballet prodigy you can only dream of. Oh, I don't know how to thank you, Ronald. You discovered him. If he's the next Travolta, I'll definitely make you his agent. We Harlem folks are the most loyal to our old connections, but your current actions are ruining him. Ronald, a little lost with Joan's rambling thoughts, quickly steered the conversation back on track. What? How could I possibly ruin him? I could never hurt Jean. He's my son. Before Saturday Night Fever and Grease, John Travolta was a small-time actor, not much different from Jean. But do you know how much John Travolta makes for a movie now? Ronald asked, pointing to the poster of Travolta with his hair slicked back with hair gel. Over $1 million, Ronald held up one finger. Joan's gaze was fixed on him. She would look at Travolta's poster one moment, then at Ronald's finger the next. His advertising earnings are even higher. Over $3 million, Ronald released his other two fingers, making a three-finger gesture. Up, Joan hiccuped, clutching her chest, as if trying to make sure she hadn't misheard the number Ronald had given her. And now director Alan Parker wants to fire you because you were a peddler, selling to crew members. Are you really going to continue selling on set and ruin your son Gene's future? No, I won't. Oh, God, I won't. Oh, I won't sell on set anymore. I'll only sell outside Harlan High School from now on. Joan started hiccuping uncontrollably. Not only can you not sell on set, you also have to keep an eye on the area and prevent other peddlers from coming in. Director Alan, I absolutely won't sell on set anymore. Don't worry, I've talked to the Italians. This is all my territory. No one else will come here to sell anymore. Please don't kick my little Gene out. He'll be very obedient. Ronald, how did you manage that? You have to stay on set. Once filming starts, there will be a lot of things going on, and we need people like you. Producer David, seeing that Gene's mother's situation had been perfectly resolved, said to Ronald. David, you know Alan won't like me on set, Ronald said quietly. Don't say that. That's Hollywood. As long as the movie is done well, there's no such thing as liking or disliking. Okay, how is the casting for the teacher going? Ronald changed the subject. There's still no progress. For the dance teacher role, we've interviewed many real dance teachers and middle-aged actors, but none of them can satisfy Alan. They all lack the scathing edge of a dance teacher. Finding a performance teacher is even harder. Many actors are reluctant to play acting teachers, they don't want to be ridiculed by their peers, and our budget is limited. How about I recommend someone, who, our casting director, Joanna Merlin, remember Meg's audition scene? I was worried Meg would break down due to emotional memories, but in the end, she didn't retrieve them. Joanna helped. I didn't realize it at the time, but after so many days, I understand. It was Joanna's line, do you use MasterCard or American Express? A dry humor that interrupted Meg's emotional process. That's why Meg ended up crying and laughing, remember? Hillary's long monologue, which was actually about an immature rich girl convincing herself to have an abortion. Joanna's line was perfectly timed, effectively dissolving the sadness. Besides, she has long limbs and a great figure, making her a convincing choice to play a dancer. But I can't dance ballet, unless you promise not to let me act in any dance scenes. Joanna made a request after hearing the producer's invitation. No problem, I agree, Joanna. You just need to instruct the girls in dance or comment on their dance moves during the entrance interviews. Director Alan, relieved, turned to Ronald and asked, do you have any suggestions for acting teachers? Acting teachers, how about that black teacher you had a great chat with when you first went to the performing arts high school? Let their teacher act in the movie, despite that school board member. Let's do it, let him audition. Alan was delighted. Besides, all the teachers in the other departments are white actors, and we need a quota. Producer David was also happy. Chapter 85. What are you doing here? Having settled Gene's matter, Ronald returned to the casting studio to update the actors' audition photos. Many actors on the casting director's file hadn't actually played any major roles and were struggling to make ends meet. Many actors' incomes were extremely unstable. They could earn a few $1,000s when they had a role, but could also go a whole year without any work, while still having to cover various acting classes, makeup artist fees, and hairstylist fees. The annual audition photo update was a significant burden for them. Commercial photographers typically charge $100 to $200 per set. At the casting studio, a set of audition photos only cost $50. If more copies were needed, they could simply take the negatives to Kodak Photo Lab for printing. This was an additional service Julia and her team provided, both updating the audition photos to prevent actors from looking too different from their pictures and failing auditions, and encouraging actors to maintain contact with a casting studio for better future collaborations. It was a win-win business strategy. Of course, another winner was Ronald. He could shoot several every week, sometimes more than 10, earning $40 per shoot, which was quite a good income. After the shoot, Ronald lingered in the studio. The studio had a considerable collection of scripts from previous years. Ronald asked for some and casually flipped through them. Hey, young photographer, we meet again. What are you doing here? Ronald looked up and recognized the large foreheaded taxi driver he'd met twice at the airport. "Oh, by the way, you're also an acting instructor. Are you here to teach?" No, I just came to see who the lucky guy is acting opposite my daughter." It turned out his daughter was also an actress. "I haven't formally introduced myself yet. Ronald Lee, call me Bert, and that's my daughter, Diane Lane." The large foreheaded man pointed towards the audition room. Ronald looked and saw a long-haired girl standing outside the audition room, chatting with a middle-aged man. It was the female lead from the movie Love on the Sunset Bridge he'd seen in Los Angeles. The little girl praised by Laurence Olivier as the new Grace Kelly. So he's the new Grace Kelly's father. No wonder he was smiling so happily last time. The middle-aged man opposite Diane had a director's viewfinder around his neck. He looked like the film's director. Is Diane going to act opposite a male actor? No, the director is holding auditions for male actors. Several candidates will be here today to shoot a short film with Diane and see who matches her best on screen. So Bert's daughter, Diane, was already confirmed as the female lead, and now they were choosing a male actor to pair with her. The new Grace Kelly was indeed extraordinary. Time magazine is also coming to interview Diane. She'll be on the cover of August. Bert spoke of his daughter with great pride. Time magazine. Ronald had seen the magazine before. Those who appeared on the cover of Time were usually big figures in politics and business. Dad, the director said he wants the whole film. Come here for a second, Diane called out. We'll talk later, Ronald. Bert went over and started talking to the director. Ronald noticed that after only a few words, Bert started arguing with a man who looked like the director. Bert was agitated and firmly refused the director, then took his daughter's hand and left. Before leaving, the little girl made a face at the director, which made Ronald chuckle. God, they're going to start filming in Fiji in the South Pacific in a few days. Are they changing the female lead now? Julia became flustered after learning that Diane Lane had refused the lead role. That crazy director, Randall Glazer, wants both the male and female leads to be completely naked during filming. Diane's only 14, he must be insane, Margaret replied. The previous lead actress, Jennifer Jason Leigh, also withdrew from the role because of this. She's 17 and it's impossible for her to accept full frontal nudity. Jennifer's father is actor Vic Morrow. She has no shortage of opportunities, Julia said. The producer must be driven crazy. Who else can he think of? Find Terry. She'll agree to anything for her daughter to get a movie role. She played a child prostitute in Pretty Girl when she was 12. Brooke Shields? She's a good fit, 5 feet 10 inches, 1.77 meters, so she won't look 14, but the male actor needs to be tall. We could also try Jodie Foster. She's 17 and has played a child prostitute before. Maybe she can handle this kind of explicit scene. Anyway, as soon as possible, preferably today, so as not to delay the filming in Fiji. Julia dialed Terry, Brooke Shields' mother and agent. Okay, no problem. The director can agree to this request. Terry agreed to let his daughter star in The Blue Lagoon, but demanded that a body double perform all the full frontal nudity scenes. The director agreed. Did he have any other options? If he had agreed earlier, Jennifer Jason Leigh and Diane Lane could have been negotiated. Forget about that. This madman might not keep his promises completely. We still have hundreds of male actors to review. The ones paired with Diane Lane are all scrapped. The height difference is too great. Ronald, you have to help us. We have hundreds of male actor profiles to move. Ronald brought over several large boxes of various sizes of videotapes and audition resumes. The big ones are VHS, the small ones are Betamax. You'll also be in charge of a video camera and help us find the male lead. Margaret assigned Ronald tasks. What kind? Ronald asked. First, he has to be tall enough. Brooke Steve Jobs is 5 feet 10 inches, 1.77 meters, so the male actor needs to be around 6 feet. Then he has to look like a savage, someone who left human society at a young age and lived alone, like Tarzan. Yes, like Tarzan. Sigh. Ronald yawned widely, having watched many videotapes, but few met the requirements. Either they weren't tall enough, or they weren't savage enough. Click. Would there be a surprise with a new tape being put into the VCR? A man with a very savage air appeared on the screen, full of wildness, his facial features like a sculpture, his eyes and nose showing some slightly intellectually disabled features. This guy is good. He looks like a savage. Ronald took out a videotape and walked to Julia's side. Take a look at this, Julia. Julia's eyes also lit up. He's really good. What's his name? Ronald picked up the attached resume. Sean Penn. Margaret took it and glanced at it. Too bad, only 5 feet 8 inches, 1.73 meters, doesn't match Brooke Silva, but wasn't it said we should focus on the character's traits? I think his traits are very prominent. Ronald was a little confused. Julia and Margaret had supported him when they cast Gene. This time is different. This is a movie about a young boy and girl who are stranded on a deserted island, live like primitive people, get married, and have children. There's no deep drama, and the movie is about to start filming in Fiji, so physical fit is the most important thing. Ronald nodded. It seems that not every movie casting prioritizes personality fit. Come to think of it, what kind of personality do the actors in Rock High have? As long as they're cheap and pretty, that's enough. How about this one? Margaret picked another one, and on the screen appeared a handsome man. Christopher Atkins, 5 feet 11 inches, tall enough. A New York actor and model. This was his surfboard commercial. Very handsome, but perhaps a little lacking in ruggedness, Ronald nitpicked. No problem, let him curl his hair, he'll look like Tarzan, Julia decided, and went to discuss it with the director. Ronald and Margaret sat at the table, eating cookies Julia had stocked up for their overtime work and drinking coffee. Actually, you're tall enough too, curled hair would suit you well, Ronald. Do you want to go to Fiji and act with Brooke Silva? Margaret teased. I've already promised David De Silva to keep an eye on Gene during the filming of Hot Lunch, then you might be missing out on a chance to become famous overnight. Well, do I really have a talent for acting? Ronald and Margaret burst into laughter. But the name Hot Lunch really needed changing, ever since they heard about that staged accident movie, saying that word always felt strange. Chapter 86 Superstition. Fame, let you steal what others love. Fame, let you lose so badly. Fame, let you lose everything. Fame, not reason, it's fire. Fame, 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 fame. Click. Alan Parker pressed the stop button on the dual cassette recorder. What do you think? Fame is a good name. Our movie is about young people striving for fame, telling the story of the hardships and failures along the way. David De Silva nodded. How did you come up with the idea of using this song by David Bowie and John Lennon as the title of the new movie? HMPH. Ronald suggested it. He was funny. He didn't come directly to me, but played it for the kids in the rehearsal room. When I asked them for new movie title suggestions, many kids recommended this song. David cleared his throat. I'm planning to hire Ronald as a set coordinator, mainly to keep Gene in check. If you don't object, I don't have time to mess with a young man. Alan pressed the eject button on the recorder and took out the cassette. Gene is an uncut diamond. He could become the Black John Travolta. He and Aaron Carla, who is also black, could star in movies together for a long time, in many movies for young people, David said, revealing his plans. But right now, he has too much of a temper, only Ronald can control him. I don't want to see him smashing the set with a fire extinguisher again. Alan nodded. Gene does listen to Ronnie, and his mother doesn't sell merchandise on set anymore, she sells it outside the school every day. She's very sensible. As he spoke, Alan waved the cassette tape in his hand at David. We need a few more powerful songs like this. Fame for background music. Have you found the right people? George Morad, who worked with me on Midnight Express, has turned down the soundtrack for the new film because he's writing songs for Donna Summer's new album. Michael Gore, not related to screenwriter Christopher Gore. He's the brother of former chart-topping singer Leslie Gore. I've heard his work, it's pretty good, and I'm planning to hire him to compose. Great, he can join the crew when we start filming and write songs while watching the shoot. Alan waved his hand, indicating that he didn't care about David's personnel arrangements, he just wanted a result. Is your lucky t-shirt finished? Filming starts the day after tomorrow. I've already given it to the costume department. It'll definitely be ready for filming. Fame, you like luxury cars. Fame, you indulge in pleasure as if there's no tomorrow. Fame, what you spend now is borrowing from the future. Fame, blind us, make us commit crimes. Fame, 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 fame. The play rehearsal had ended, and one of the extras turned on the double cassette recorder again, David Bowie's voice echoing throughout the rehearsal room. Hey, let's change to something rhythmic, the students clamored. This funk song clearly didn't suit the actors' tastes after just finishing rehearsals. What they needed now was relaxation, they needed disco. Change to Donna Summer's Hot Stuff. A student eagerly put in the cassette tape he'd brought. Ronald started listening to the disco again. It had been in the top 10 for 3 months, and he was practically sick of it. Boom, cha-cha, boom, cha-cha, the disco rhythm began. Need some hot love, baby, tonight. I need a hot thing, baby, tonight. I want a hot thing, baby, tonight. The lyrics made many parents in America uncomfortable. And some newspapers in conservative areas were calling for the song to be banned, but it was incredibly popular among young people. The performers started dancing to disco. The extras and actors, mostly art school students, began to move to the rhythm, one by one into the center of the dance floor, each tacitly allocating a few dozen seconds to showcase themselves. Like peacocks courting in the animal kingdom, proudly displaying their figures to the opposite sex. Ronald was very familiar with this daily routine after rehearsals and was about to walk away when Jean jumped into the circle and shouted, "You're next, Ronald." A cheer erupted from the crowd, showing considerable liking for the young man who had brought him the homemade air conditioner and chilled cola. Jean, knowing Ronald was a good dancer, gave him a chance to showcase his skills to the pretty girls. Unable to refuse, Ronald stepped onto the stage and began dancing. He first pointed his right hand at a 45-degree angle to the sky, striking a classic pose reminiscent of John Travolta's Grease. Then, he circled his arms like a boxer preparing to throw a punch, followed by pointing at each girl with his left hand while swaying his hips rhythmically with his right hand on his hip. The slightly outdated, old-fashioned disco moves made the performers burst into laughter. Ronald pointed to Antonia's location, saw her laughing at his old-fashioned moves, and grinned back. He then stopped dancing and ran to the refrigerator to grab a cola to cool himself down. The cola in the rehearsal room refrigerator was empty, but Ronald remembered there was one left at the producer's office, so he went to the office. The new assistant in the costume department was sobbing quietly in the office, holding several scraps of fabric in her hands, seemingly unsure what had happened. "What's wrong? What happened?" "I'm fine." The assistant wiped away her tears and began piecing together scraps of fabric on the table. "This is the director's lucky t-shirt," another costume assistant said from the side. "Every time he makes a movie, he cuts off pieces from his costumes and sews them onto his t-shirts. Alan believes this brings him good luck on his shoots." That one was the one he wore for his first movie. "It was tattered, and when we were mending it today, it completely ripped. When she told the director about it, he yelled at her and gave her a hard time fixing it today, or he'd fire her." Ronald picked up the scraps of fabric on the table. The fabric was all faded, and some pieces had holes in the middle. "These fabrics look like they've been washed hundreds of times." "Yes, Alan insists that the costumes be as realistic as possible. All the costumes we bought are currently in the washing machine to wash away the bright colors. To create a realistic feel," the costume assistant said. "The fabric on this t-shirt is all cut and pieced together from costumes he made in his old movies." Alan insisted on only wearing lucky t-shirts during filming. There were 4 in total, and the one that broke was the oldest. Ronald looked at the scraps of fabric on the table, then at the costume assistant who had stopped sobbing and was diligently piecing the fabric together, and thought, does being a film director have to be this superstitious? Why don't you use a white t-shirt as a base and sew these pieces of fabric on top? Ronald's words reminded the costume assistant. "Thank you. I should have thought of that." The assistant quickly grabbed a white t-shirt, measured the fabric scraps against it a couple of times, and began to sew. Chapter 87 Killing the Chicken to Warn the Monkey. "No, you acted very well, don't worry about forgetting your lines." Jim, a black teacher in the acting department of a performing arts high school, finally got the role that matched his profession, playing an acting teacher in the film. Today was the first day of filming, and the first shot was him commenting on Montgomery, a student who came for his entrance interview. Cut. Alan Parker, wearing his tattered lucky t-shirt, called a halt to filming. The makeup artist came forward and wiped the sweat from Jim's forehead. The indoor close-up of Jim was being filmed, with a lighting technician using strong positive lighting, several large lights scorching Jim opposite him. "I want to say this line a different way. Let's do it again," the director ordered. Record, camera, action. "No, you acted very well. Cut. One more time. Cut, cut, cut." Ronald watched the director tormenting the acting teacher Jim, feeling somewhat disapproving. What was this? Was he playing with people? "Let's do it again." Alan signaled to resume filming. "No, you acted very well." Ronald felt a pang of sympathy for Jim as he recited his lines, remembering that Alan Parker had stopped him over 30 times. In the script, Jim was praising others' performances, but on set, He was constantly being criticized by the director. Cut. Ronald saw Jim starting to break down. Anyone who had been criticized over 30 times would start to doubt themselves. 5-minute break. The director noticed Jim's discomfort and called a halt. Jim drank some water, adjusted his posture, and muttered to himself, seemingly trying to calm himself. "What's the director doing? I don't see anything wrong with Jim's acting. It's just a simple line." Evaluating an auditioning student, Ronald quietly asked Joanna Merlin, who was waiting in the wings. She had a scene to audition for dancers later. The wise man Confucius once said, "To frighten a group of monkeys, you must first kill a chicken." Joanna gestured for him to look at the camera. "Let's continue filming," the director told everyone to prepare to start again. Recording, camera, action. Huh? Ronald noticed something was wrong. The red light on the camera wasn't even on. The director hadn't actually told the cinematographer to start the camera, he was just making excuses to mess with Jim. Cut, cut, cut. Was the whole morning going to be wasted on this one shot? Ronald went back to David Da Silva. Did the producer really allow the director to waste time so recklessly? If this were Roger Coleman's crew, they probably would have fired the director by now. Da Silva seemed to have anticipated all of this, smiling as he watched the crew's progress. Ronald was confused again. The clumsy trick had started again. Jim couldn't take it anymore and stood up, whispering to the director, "Alan, what's going on? You've made me say my lines over 100 times, but the camera hasn't even started? What do you need me to do?" Alan smiled at Jim and said, "Jim, don't worry. You've said this line in over 100 different ways. You'll get better. You're a good actor, don't doubt yourself." Jim sat down, somewhat devastated. Fortunately, the sound engineer on set was Italian. Although he didn't speak English, he came over and gave Jim a thumbs up, indicating that he was doing a good job. Jim finally relaxed and signaled that he was ready to start the next take. Record, camera, action. This time the camera lights came on. Cut. Great. This one's developed. This shot only had a few lines from Jim. After a few takes, Alan signaled to move on to the next scene. It was Ronald's first time seeing a major studio shoot an interior scene. Setting up the lighting in the interior was very time-consuming. The next scene was about Montgomery, the students who came for his college interview. His lines were much longer. The lighting crew started removing bulbs, changing the angle to focus the lights on a chair on the stage, and began the long lighting process. The camera crew, under the direction of cinematographer Michael Saracen, began laying down the track on the floor. This was a scene that required the actors to portray a lot of emotion, and after discussing it, the director and cinematographer decided not to shoot the main shot, but to start with close-ups. After nearly 2 hours, the lighting finally signaled to the cinematographer that the lighting was ready. The actor sat on a stool, waiting for the cinematographer to check the focus and make final adjustments to the lighting. Film lenses are similar to camera lenses. Wide-angle lenses for main shots are relatively small. However, close-up lenses are much larger. A massive close-up shot, mounted on a tripod, was almost as tall as a person. It was aimed directly at the actor playing Montgomery. The camera was extremely close, almost next to his face. He looked like a monster, about to devour him. The actor, with blonde hair, somewhat resembled Robespierre, the leader of the French Revolution. He was clearly terrified by the camera so close to his face. He kept repeating his lines, afraid of making a mistake during filming. The assistant cinematographer checked the focus for the frightened actor, and the costume and hairstylist confirmed his appearance met the requirements. Alan didn't offer any acting guidance, discuss the character's motivations, or talk about acting details. He didn't even glance at him. Wait, what kind of approach is this to scare this young actor like this? Ronald felt he couldn't understand the English director's thinking at all. If it were a director from the New World, at least they'd explain the scene, right? Record. Camera. Action. Alan Parker ignored the actor's somewhat terrified state and started the first take. Every time I go to a party, I'm always worried that people won't like me. The actor playing Montgomery began his lines. Ronald stood in the safe area behind the camera, watching his performance with his naked eye. The lines were fairly fluent, but there was a hint of fear in his voice, and his eyes were fixed on Jim, the black teacher standing behind the camera, acting opposite him. The camera slowly panned down from a still of Shakespeare's Othello until a close-up of Montgomery's face. I've been studying at military school. My mother is an actress, but she's very busy and doesn't have time for me, so she sent me to military school. Several assistants in the camera crew, under the direction of the chief pusher, controlled the camera's movement. The camera began to approach the actor at a very slow speed. In cinematography terms, this was an ultimate close-up, if viewed through the viewfinder. The actor's face, initially filling the entire frame with a red line, gradually expanded beyond the frame, focusing on his panicked eyes and stammering mouth. Montgomery in the scene forgot his next line. Cut. Good, this take is good. Alan Parker instructed the script supervisor to note it down, then said to the first assistant director, let's do another take. Every time I go to a party, I'm always worried that people won't like me. Huh? Even Ronald, far away, could sense that the actor's performance wasn't as good as the last one. The fear, embarrassment, and helplessness of forgetting lines during a college interview were most fully conveyed in the first take. So that's it. Alan Parker deliberately avoided speaking to the actor, then immediately used a huge close-up shot, focusing on him up close. Adding to this, Jim, who played the teacher, had been relentlessly filmed dozens of takes by Alan, creating immense psychological pressure for these young actors. This pressure naturally reflected in their performances, much like the psychological pressure they faced during their college interviews. So the emotions in the first take were very real and full. But in the second take, because the first take had passed, the actor's psychological pressure was somewhat relieved, so naturally, the emotions weren't as real as in the first take. Tisk, Ronald sighed inwardly. This tactic was interesting. The director seemed to have prepared for a long time, first using a pretext to prank the drama teacher Jim, then deliberately arranging a series of setbacks for the actor playing Montgomery. That's how he delivered that perfect performance. The idiom killing the chicken to scare the monkey does make sense, but did Confucius say that the afternoon's filming pace quickened? Because it was the same audition location, the lighting didn't need to be readjusted, only minor adjustments based on each actor's height were needed. The effect of the morning's killing the chicken to scare the monkey on Jim was still there. The actors obediently completed their performances. The actress playing the shy Doris was Maureen Tiffany. She was very pretty, with a small nose, blonde hair, and didn't look Jewish at all. She looked more like an Irish person. Whether it was her superb acting skills or extra coaching from the director, she filmed the challenging crying scene for the college entrance interview in one take. Ronnie, it's your turn now. Perform well, Alan Parker called Ronald over with a smile. This was based on Woody Allen's suggestion to have him play a clueless newcomer to the audition. After makeup and costume, Ronald transformed into a physically strong but simple-minded student, his hair styled in a silly manner. Holding his prop, a soft-cover copy of Romeo and Juliet, Ronald stood on the audition stage. Recording, camera, action. Alan called action, found the director's chair, sat down, and watched Ronald begin his performance, his expression serious, ready to stop him at any moment to give him some pointers. Ronald wasn't afraid of him. He composed himself, opened the novel, and began reciting his lines. Romeo, where are you? Deny your father, reject his surname. Ronald shook his leg as he read the lines, like a sports-obsessed idiot who insisted on auditioning for the acting department at an arts high school. If you're not willing to do that, then I'll abandon my surname. I'll no longer be a Capu. What? Capulet. Jim, the black teacher he was acting opposite, reminded him. Huh? It's Capulet. Yes, that's what I just read, Ronald continued, and soon you won't be a Montague, a Mentag. No, what the hell, it's Montague. Listen. You're reading Juliet's lines. Oh, damn it. Ronald promptly turned and banged his head against the wall. Cut. Alan Parker had to admit that the take was good, and instructed the script supervisor to write it down. This one's developed. Ronald wasn't afraid of Alan. This kind of emotion perfectly captured the character's silly, naive nature. One more take, Alan shouted. Ronnie, you need to act even sillier. You're still too shrewd when you read your lines. Cut. One more take. Chapter 88 July Furnace. Several days of filming passed in the blink of an eye. After Ronald's cameo, he simply wandered around the set, his job being to keep an eye on Gene and prevent him from throwing a tantrum. The Screen Actors Guild of New York also sent observers to the set to ensure everyone left on time. Ronald only needed to work regular hours, from 9 to 6. This routine pleased Ronald, and he resumed his habit of watching ABC's Good Morning America while eating breakfast. Producer David gave Ronald a minimum wage for an actor, $785 a week. He was nominally an actor, but David's main task was to keep an eye on Gene and his mother. In reality, Gene and his mother wouldn't cause trouble for the sake of future riches. So what was Ronald's actual job? Observing Alan's every move and secretly learning. Of course, forget about asking Alan why he filmed it this way. Director Alan was still somewhat dissatisfied with him, and their relationship wasn't as selfless as that of the directors in the New World who would teach him. Filming continued. The crew moved to the dance rehearsal room to begin filming the scenes with the dance students. Cough, cough, Joanna, playing the dance teacher and also having some scenes today, exclaimed, "What kind of poison gas are you releasing?" Cinematographer Michael Saracen directed the lighting assistant to add incense powder to several charcoal stoves, light them, and fan the powder around, filling the room with it. This is a traditional lighting method used on our English set. The director said he needed a warm and mysterious atmosphere. The powder is as dense as air, so it floats for a long time, creating a unique effect when the light shines on it. Cough, cough, can't you just not use the powder? I think it's bad for my health. Without it, you'd need multiple lights to achieve the same effect, and you'd need to relight it every time you change the camera angle. This powder method is traditional. It only requires one light, and the light is very evenly distributed, allowing you to move the camera freely without needing to relight it. Ronald, also covering his nose with a handkerchief, listened to the cinematographer explain to the actors. Lighting is indeed the most time-consuming part of indoor shooting. If the lighting needs to be redone every time the camera moves, only 4 shots can be filmed a day. Achoo, someone sneezed. The scent of the perfume powder was so strong that Ronald was also tempted to sneeze. Fortunately, the actors got used to the smell soon, and the discomfort subsided considerably. Today's scene included many dance moves. After the lighting was completed, it was time for the choreographers to come on stage. The choreographer created a ballet routine for each actor and had them jump out in turn, following the path of the moving camera. 1, 2, 3. Go. Antonia, next. 1, 2, 3. Lucy, it's you. Because the perfume powder needed to float evenly in the room, the electric fans that would disperse it were removed from the room and placed in the hallway. The actors could only go out to cool off during breaks in filming. After 2 rehearsals, the dancers were sweating profusely and quickly escaped the room to cool off with the electric fans. Ronald quickly followed them out to help scoop ice into the ice packs. The temperature was very high today, and with 4 charcoal stoves still burning, constantly releasing incense powder, it was extremely easy to get heat stroke and dehydration in the room. These actors, mostly high school students, had no agents or assistants, so Ronald helped them whenever he had time. It's so hot. Gene picked up an ice pack Ronald had prepared and put it on himself. He was wearing shorts and a short-sleeved shirt, which was the best way to cool down. Yet, and the costume department even forced us to wear thick wool tights like those for autumn and winter. Several girls were sweating so much that their dance costumes were soaked, looking rather unsightly. They were diligently wiping the sweat from the back of their necks with towels. The makeup artist, with powder and brushes, rushed over to touch up their makeup. Sweat melted some of the makeup, requiring retouching after every take. The hairstylist also rushed over to restyle their hair. Sweat had loosened some of the styled hair, making the high temperature a major obstacle to filming. The costume designer also came to check the extent of the sweat-soaked costumes, and for the main characters whose costumes were more soaked, they were asked to change into spare outfits. To save time, people from multiple departments swarmed around the main characters, like octopuses, helping them with everything. Antonia was the absolute star. Her sweat had melted a lot of her makeup, and the makeup artist was busy fixing it on set. The plot of Fame was set in autumn, so all the costumes reflected that season. Wearing thick wool dance tights in a closed room during the sweltering summer was pure torture. Ronald could only offer Antonia and the others extra ice water and prepare ice packs to cool them down. Fortunately, these girls had good endurance, driven by their desire to become famous through filming. After filling another ice pack, Ronald draped the long, thin one around Antonia's neck. Antonia felt so comfortable she almost cried out, turning back to thank Ronald. Ronald continued filing ice packs, placing them on the remaining girls as well. Ready to film, the first assistant director urged, and the girls reluctantly put down their ice packs and went into the oven. After rehearsals, filming began. Alan, unlike his previous meticulous approach, wasn't making overly detailed demands. As long as the cinematographer approved and the footage was fine, it was acceptable. It seemed he too was finding the oven-like indoor temperature unbearable. After filming came the staging. The director and cinematographer planned the camera movement and actor positioning for the next shot. The lighting crew planned the lighting according to the director's instructions. If any lighting would be captured on camera, they had to discuss it with the director again. Staging, lighting, rehearsals, filming, one cycle followed another, and the crew slowly progressed according to plan in the sweltering heat. During breaks and lighting, the dancers didn't have the energy to dance and entertain themselves as they had in previous days. Ronald approached producer David, requesting more ice to ensure no one on set suffered heat stroke. The director and actors could take turns resting. The worst off were the camera operators. They had to help push and pull the camera during filming. While the director and actors went outside to cool off, they stayed indoors adding incense powder to the charcoal stove to maintain the concentration of incense in the room. Most of these operators were recruited by director Alan from England, having worked with a cinematographer and director for a long time. Bringing them here from overseas was a costly move to minimize disruption and allow for immediate filming. As long-time contacts of the director, they received substantial subsidies, which infuriated several of the American camera operators. They suffered in the same high temperatures without rest or extra pay. One of the American operators, during his lunch break, secretly took a glass jar and filled it with face powder. Have Gene stand on the corner of the table, looking like he's intently watching Hillary dance. Understand, after the last conflict, Alan Parker was hesitant to directly ask Gene for anything, usually relaying requests through Ronald. You need to stand on your tiptoes here, make an arabesque gesture, then go back to Leroy, getting closer to him than normal. Make him confused, are you seducing him, or just casually getting closer? After getting past him, look him in the eye, give him a follow me look. Alan Parker then proceeded to instruct Antonia on the scene. The afternoon's filming involved Hillary seducing Leroy. The carpenter arrived during lunchtime and erected a door to a men's dressing room inside the dance rehearsal space. The door was incredibly realistic, it could open and close, but of course, there was nothing inside. The two actors had to open the door, go in, and then close it again. The camera, shooting from the outside, just needed to make it look like a room. Gene, playing Leroy, stood by a table outside the door, waiting for Antonia, playing Hillary, to seduce him. His task in the scene was relatively simple. Initially confused, then, after receiving Hillary's signal, he paused for half a second, feigned understanding, followed Hillary into the men's dressing room, and closed the door behind him. Okay, let's rehearse once. No, you need to get even closer, close enough to make both of you tense. Understand? Alan Parker looked directly at Antonia and said he needed to get even closer to Gene. No, you're too close again. That's the distance a thief needs to maintain when stealing. It needs to be just right, not too close, not too far, just enough to create an awkward distance, understand? 10-minute break. Alan Parker, seeing that Antonia, who is usually very quick to understand, couldn't grasp the awkward distance this time, assumed she was too tired and told her to take a 10-minute break. Ronald still put the ice pack on Antonia's neck. What's wrong, Antonia? You're always the first to understand the scenes the director describes. Antonia tilted her neck, feeling the coolness of the ice pack. Gene is, well, you know what I mean. So I can't feel his reaction. Acting is actually about acting out reactions. If the other person doesn't give a reaction, it's hard for me to continue acting. Have you ever acted before? Ronald felt that what Antonia said made a lot of sense. Yes, I had a supporting role in the oil production 2 years ago, dancing behind Travolta and the lead actress Olivia Newton-John, Antonia said with a laugh. So I have a union card. This temperature is unbearable. Why don't you help me find the right distance? I don't want to film so many takes, Antonia said quietly to Ronald after his makeup and hair were done and he left. Okay. It's definitely better to finish sooner. Ronald thought that if they filmed any longer in the sweltering room, the girl might faint, so he took a step forward, getting closer to Antonia. Do you feel like I'm invading your privacy? It doesn't seem close enough. Antonio reached out to feel the distance between them. How about this? Ronald took another half step forward. It seems like we could get a little closer. Antonia's body was about an elbow's distance from him. How about this? Ronald took another half step forward. Okay, Antonia took a half step back. The masculine scent of Ronald rushed into her mind, making her face flush. Luckily, she was already hot, so her face was red. I'm getting into it. Ronald also felt he had been a bit abrupt earlier. He picked up a towel and handed it to Antonia, gesturing for her to wipe the sweat from her neck. It's really too hot, cut. Great, this take is good. Alan was very satisfied with the rest of the shoot. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89: The Power of Unions. I'm a representative of the International Union of Cinematographers. We received a tip-off that you've been widely distributing this harmful powder on set. According to our union's bylaws, you must suspend filming until test results confirm the powder is harmless to cinematographers, or until you stop using it. A few days later, one morning, a man in a suit stormed onto the set with a glass bottle containing some powder and announced a work stoppage. Hello, I'm a representative of the Screen Actors Guild. For the same reasons, I'm announcing that all union actors are temporarily suspended from work, effective immediately. A while later, the actors' union representative stationed on set, after consulting with a representative of the International Union of Cinematographers, also announced a temporary strike by the actors. What the hell is going on? Alan Parker, an Englishman, shut the door and began yelling at producer David. It's simple, you were reported by the Americans in the cinematography crew. David De Silva remained calm. He had encountered many messy union situations before. Your cinematographer team is mainly English. Although the International Cinematographers Guild has international in its name, over 80% of its members are American and Canadian, so their headquarters are registered in New York. The whole thing is simple. The guild is unhappy that you haven't hired enough locals, so they were using this complaint as an excuse to cause trouble. If you hire more local guild members, everything is negotiable. The Actors Guild representative didn't say anything a few days ago, but now they're being forced to speak out by the Cinematographers Guild. How can I hire them? He's a member of the Cinematographers Guild. If I hire other positions, he won't be happy either. We already have 14 people in the camera crew: electricians, zoom operators, camera operators, assistant operators, focus pullers, etc., 10 of whom are from the British Isles and Europe. Do you want me to fire some of them and hire locals? David gave a "That's exactly what I mean" look. No, that won't work. Alan Parker thought for a moment and rejected David's idea. Not only the camera crew, but also the sound crew, lighting crew, electrical crew, and many of the crew's technicians were brought by Alan from the British Isles and Europe. If they were laid off because of the union, the morale of the crew would be greatly affected. So what do you plan to do? I'll discuss it with the director of photography, Michael. We'll stop using the powder and single light lighting and use the multi-light method commonly used in America. After removing the charcoal stove and powder, Director of Photography Michael Saracen began to direct the lighting crew to add multiple lights to the set. The representative of the International Union of Cinematographers, seeing that the powder had been removed, smiled and shook hands with the director and producer. We'll meet again. The representative of the Screen Actors Guild also announced the end of the temporary strike, and the crew could continue filming. To achieve the same effect, the director of photography had the lighting crew add 4 more lights, strong frontal lighting, plus side fill light, barely recreating the original dreamy and mysterious atmosphere. The inevitable cost was that the actors, directly exposed to the lights, were even hotter than before. The makeup and hairstyling teams were even more stressed than in the previous days of filming. They were sweating profusely, constantly on the verge of touch-ups. Too much time would get them yelled at by the director, and too little time would result in mistakes and a scolding from the cinematographer. Ronald was also busier than ever. They stopped using face powder, and the electric fan was brought back to the set. However, the noise was too loud to use during sound recording. It could only be turned on briefly during breaks to help the actors cool down. Ronald constantly replaced the ice packs with fresh ice to ensure no one fainted. An accident still occurred. One of the female dancers, wearing thick wool dance stockings that were too absorbent, sweated profusely in the poorly ventilated set under the lights. Her feet became soaked, her shoes came loose, and she slipped on the floor. Fortunately, she wasn't seriously injured, just fell. Ronald felt they couldn't continue. Meg Tilly had to give up her ballet career because of a back injury she suffered in an accident. If things continue like this, I'm afraid there might be an accident, said producer David De Silva. David agreed, yes, our on-site insurance company representative will also stop filming. I'll go talk to Alan, you come with me. No, absolutely not. Fame is a story that takes place in autumn. Enrollment is in autumn, and all the rehearsals, performances, studies, and graduation happen in autumn. They have to perform wearing thick wool dance stockings from autumn and winter. Alan Parker was absolutely unwilling to compromise for the sake of the film's authenticity. But if this continues, the actors might be in danger, and the insurance company won't allow it. They'll stop your risky behavior. Can't we install air conditioning? Ronald suggested quietly. No, the noise from commercially available air conditioners will affect the synchronous sound recording, and the airflow disturbance will also affect the stability of the camera lens capturing the footage. Unless it's a dedicated central air conditioning system built in a studio, David explained to Ronald. Could we use summer fabric for the dance costumes? At least let their legs wear cool, breathable thin tights, otherwise slipping is inevitable, Ronald suggested again. I understand your concern for the actors, Ronnie, Alan said, pointing to Ronald. But the most important thing in film is authenticity. Audiences these days don't buy into stage plays in a studio. You have to pursue the authenticity of the costumes. I had all the costumes washed 3 times by the costume department, aging the brand new colors before using them. Wearing summer fabric in the fall would definitely give us away. Sometimes, for the final effect of the film, we have to take a little risk. Ronald couldn't help but recall the fragments of his dream. How was this problem solved there? It was impossible to film the whole thing in thick, moisture-wicking wool tights, right? There must be a solution. Huh? What's this? Ronald recalled the scene in his dream where the dancers wore some kind of woolen ornament. Like long stockings, but without anything below the ankle, like a woolen loop around the dancers' ankles. The yarn wasn't meant to be stuffy. The large holes in the yarn actually allowed air to pass through. This way, the actors could wear thin tights made of summer fabric to dance, while still giving the audience the feeling that the story was set in autumn. Director, I have an idea. Should the costume department try it? Ronald asked Alan for a costume assistant to experiment with. Like this, cut off the part below the ankle, and then gather the opening here. Ronald found the costume assistant who had sewed the lucky t-shirt for the director last time, and retrieved long woolen socks from the costume library, modifying them into the kind of woolen covers he had in his dream. Yes, it's best to use elastic bands to gather the opening here. If the yarn falls down to the heel below the ankle, it's easy to slip, so we need to gather it here to secure it at the ankle, Ronald suggested to the costume assistant. Make several sets. The shorter ones can just cover the ankle, the longer ones can extend below the knee, and the longest ones can go above the knee. That looks great. Ronald recalled that the woolen covers in his dream came in various lengths, and he had the costume assistant make 3 styles, long, medium, and short, based on the design. Holding the 3 finished knitted sets, Ronald stormed into the dance rehearsal room on set. These actresses all have contracts with a production team, meet the Screen Actors Guild's minimum wage requirements, and have their payslips from the previous week as proof. Under the Taft-Hartley Act, they are already considered temporary members with the same treatment as union members. Therefore, we can, according to the Screen Actors Guild's regulations, launch a strike against Alan Parker for continuing filming despite the serious threat to the actresses' health and potentially their careers. Alan Parker still ignored the advice and continued filming despite the objections. The actresses were very emotional. All ballet dancers fear injury most. The previous actresses' slip made them unwilling to continue filming. Even with a tiny chance of fame, no girl would be so foolish as to give up a ballet career she had painstakingly cultivated for over a decade. They found the resident union representative, and after some negotiation, the representative formally threatened to strike Alan Parker. New York and Hollywood are the 2 places where various unions are most powerful in the entertainment industry. Production crews working there are terrified of strike threats from union representatives. A strike would mean massive financial losses. The crew would usually yield to reasonable, or even slightly unreasonable, demands. Continuing filming would incur opposition from the Screen Actors Guild. Reverting to single lamp lighting with powder lighting would solve the problem of slipping due to sweat, but would again provoke opposition from the International Union of Cinematographers. Alan Parker was at a loss and began seriously considering hiring a few more local union members to avoid further trouble. Director, I found a solution. We can try it. Ronald said to Alan Parker, holding up 3 pairs of woolen covers. Antonia, go change into your breathable, thin dance stockings for summer. After Antonia changed into the breathable dance stockings and came to him, Ronald knelt down, placed Antonia's soft-sole dance shoes on his knees, and then slipped a long woolen cover onto her. Secure it here with a safety pin to prevent it from slipping down, Ronald instructed the costume assistant, temporarily addressing the issue of the woolen cover slipping down. If the director agreed, elastic could be added. Then Ronald pulled the knitted cover up Antonia's calf, all the way past her knee. Tied up here too, and this foot, Ronald said, repeating the same for the other foot. He put Antonia's foot down. Try it. Does it feel stuffy and make you sweat? Antonia deftly turned around twice. It doesn't feel stuffy. I can feel the wind blowing through the holes. It's much better than wool. Director, do you think this is okay? Excellent. I think it captures the feeling of autumn even better. Wow, the girls thought Antonia looked beautiful in the knitted cover and rushed over to try it on. What's this knitted cover called? Antonia struck a ballet pose, completely unconcerned. She was very satisfied with her invention and tilted her head to ask Ronald. Let's call it a leg warmer, okay? The knitted fabric looks warm. I've been busy lately, so there are a few typos. If you find any, please point them out in the book review. Thank you. Chapter 90 Hot Lunch. Bang! 2 slices of bread popped out of the toaster. Ronald took the buttered, toasted bread slices, sandwiched them with thawed bacon from the supermarket, cheese slices, a few slices of pickles, and some chopped tomatoes. He ate his homemade sandwich while drinking milk. Having earned several $1,000s, Ronald was improving his life. American appliances are always perfect for lazy and busy people. While eating, I watched ABC's Good Morning America. A shocking scene unfolded during halftime of yesterday's Major League Baseball game at Commerce Park in Chicago. Thousands of disco records were poured onto the field, doused with gasoline, and set on fire during the replay of the Chicago White Sox vs. Detroit Tigers game. According to Chicago radio DJ Steve Dahl, who launched the campaign, it was time to destroy this kind of music exclusive to black and gay people. He claimed that this indecent dance and lyrics tarnished America and disgraced God. Dahl appealed to spectators on his 97.9 WLUP-FM channel to bring a disco record to the stadium, where it would be collected by staff and destroyed on-site during halftime. He claimed that the out-of-control behavior of thousands of spectators rushing onto the field and burning records until being removed by police was irresponsible. Due to the persistent smoke and the dangerous behavior of the spectators, the umpire declared the game over, awarding the victory to the Detroit Tigers who led at halftime. This news didn't seem to have much impact in New York. The restaurant was still playing disco music, and the actors on set, during breaks and the lighting, continued their disco dancing. America is big enough that the resistance to disco among the conservative residents of small towns in the South and Midwest hasn't yet affected young people in the big cities on the East and West coasts. Thanks to the use of leg warmers, the dancers wore thinner, more breathable costumes, making them less prone to sweating, thus speeding up the filming process. Today, the crew was to film a dance scene in the art school cafeteria. This was originally the scene for the theme song Hot Lunch, but because the film was renamed Famous, the song was relegated to a background track. The carpenters had already renovated the original cafeteria at Harlan High School according to the production design requirements. The cramped cafeteria was crammed with 2 distressed pianos and a drum set. This was the first major scene in the film's production, featuring over 30 dancers, more than a dozen instrumentalists, and Aaron Cara singing. The film's composer, Michael Gore, was also on set, still working on his lyrics. High school students at art schools hate cafeteria food, but the prices are so low that they have a love-hate relationship with it. Hey, what did you eat in your high school cafeteria? Michael Gore asked Ronald as he passed by. What? Ronald turned around. Me? In high school, it was just those mixed dishes, you know, whatever was cheap. It was either stew, porridge, or carrots with salmon. Yeah, the ingredients were cheap. Gore turned back to jot down some inspiration. We're filming today, and you're still revising the lyrics? Is there enough time? Ronald couldn't help but ask. It's okay, we're only filming Eileen Carey's part of the lines today. I still have to revise the rest. I see. Ronald shook his head and sat down, seeing him engrossed in revising the lyrics again. Dong dong, dang dang, ding ding, dang dang. Gore began pressing the melody on the piano. Today we're having stew porridge, and carrots and salmon. No, that doesn't make sense. If it's blue, it must be stew. If it's yellow, it's porridge. Ronald hummed the lyrics of the song he dreamed of, following the melody. What? Sing that again. Gore hadn't heard him clearly. If it's blue, it must be stew. If it's yellow, it's porridge, Ronald said. We always line up to eat, and we can't see what's on the menu from a distance, so we can only tell what's bad by the color. Very good, that's a good line. What's your name? Ronald Lee. I'm the composer for the film crew. Michael Gore. Dong dong, dang dang, ding ding, dang dang. Michael continued playing his melody. Macaroni and salmon, our favorite dish. She got a hot lunch, for everyone. Ronald couldn't help but hum it again. What? What? Sing it again, Michael Gore exclaimed excitedly. Ronald sang it again. The best lunch is salmon or pasta, but it's only once or twice a week. So you have to fight to get to the cafeteria that day. Waitress, cafeteria lady, don't mess with her, she'll take every penny. She gives you one lunch a day. She's nice to everyone. One hot lunch for everyone. If it's blue, it's stew. If it's yellow, it's mush, pasta and salmon, our favorite dishes. She got a hot lunch for everyone. Wait a minute, I'll go sing this to Aaron Carla's agent. We'll use this word today. Michael Gore took the newly revised lyrics and ran off to discuss it with the others. Anyway, it's the original lyrics, so it doesn't matter if I give it to him in advance, right? Ronald thought, and began to sit down to observe the choreographer designing movements for the various dancers. This scene was a big one. The musicians were fine, the cameraman would allocate fixed shots. But the extras would have to fight for their spots. Even in the rehearsal stage, they had already started shoving each other for positions. A big battle might break out later. Ronald wondered if he should talk to the producer first. Michael Gore, rushing back, interrupted his train of thought. Hey Ronald, get your agent here. Aaron Carla's agent is thrilled. The producer says you should be credited as half the lyricist. I don't have an agent yet. I'll call my lawyer. I graduated from Dwight Englewood School of Music. Which school did you go to? I never went to a music school. Then you're a gifted lyricist. Why don't you have an agent with your talent? Actually, I'm studying directing. I'll be starting in a few months. After calling Lindsay Dole, Ronald asked her to handle the lyricist contract. He started watching the dance rehearsal again. The dancers began deliberately bumping into each other, knocking each other out of the camera's view, tripping each other, and stepping on each other's toes. Ah, a girl cried, pulling up her pants and running outside. Apparently, her pants had been pulled down. Meanwhile, Lucy, leaning against Jean, had a fixed position in the choreography and didn't need to worry about her screen time. The film crew was essentially a troupe of monkeys. The monkeys with power divided up the spheres of influence, while those without power either sought out powerful backers or had to compete and fight for their own survival. David, you need to look at the competition among the dancers. We need to set boundaries for them. Competition must be limited to dance skills. No toe stepping, pants pulling, or other underhanded tactics, or it'll cause big trouble, Ronald told producer David, offering his opinion. A while later, the choreographer announced the new rules. Competition was now confined to dance battles. Whoever danced best would get more screen time. While it couldn't completely eliminate underhanded tactics, it was much better than before. Ronald, you graduated from a public high school, right? How do you have so many skills? Look, you can take photos, write scripts, and even compose lyrics. Ronald's personal lawyer, Ms. Lindsay Dole, handed him the negotiated lyrics contract. I can't explain it, Ronald said, beginning to read the contract. Okay, here's your credit, second in the lyricist list. Here's your share. They have a plan to release the soundtrack simultaneously with a movie, and you'll get some of your lyricist's revenue. How is the revenue calculated? A small portion of the total sales. As long as the record sales exceed a certain number, you'll receive checks every quarter. Ronald signed the contract and handed it to the lawyer. Also, although I can help you with these things, you'd better find an agent. Besides contracts, they can also find you new business. Agent? Ronald touched his ear. It seemed he really needed to find an agent. Recording, camera, action. If it's blue, it's stew. If it's yellow, it's mush. Aaron Carla sat at the piano, singing the lyrics Ronald had written to the music. The dancers began jumping onto the piano, onto the dining table, dancing energetically, hoping the camera would linger on them for a few more seconds. Jean and Lucy's scenes were guaranteed. and they danced happily as well. Even the two extras recommended from the audition studio to play the cafeteria ladies were happy, wiggling their thickened waists. They each got a front-facing shot. Cut. Great, this take is done. The afternoon scenes are finished. Alan Parker announced the completion of the cafeteria lunch scene, and all the actors shouted happily. Erin Caro had the most front-facing shots in today's scenes, and she happily came to thank Ronald. She really liked the witty lyrics and sang them comfortably. Everyone, today is my birthday. I'd like to invite you all to my house for a party. Jean extended an invitation to all the actors after filming wrapped. Okay, I'll go, a female extra spoke up, but she was quickly pulled back by her companion, who whispered, Jean's from Harlem, you dare to go. The silence made Jean very embarrassed. Everyone left the set in silence. Jean forcefully smashed a plastic prop water cup on the ground. Splash, water spilled everywhere, just like his mood. After everyone left, Ronald went up to Jean and asked, It's good to invite everyone to your birthday party, but why did you invite them to your house instead of a restaurant, like the four of us did last time? I wanted to let those brats in the neighborhood see. Chapter 91 Birthday Party. Ronald questioned Jean carefully and learned his plans. It turned out Jean's neighbors were quite hostile towards him. His mother was a sex worker, and many neighbors knew he, the dancing b-boy, was gay. Jean had only been home on weekends, and many called him a fag, implying he worked as a gigolo during the week to earn money for new clothes. Jean tried to explain, saying he was filming a movie and about to become a movie star, with Lucy vouching for him. But none of the neighborhood boys believed him. They preferred to believe their own fabricated gigolo stories rather than the boy they mocked who could become a black John Travolta. Driven by pride, Jean invited everyone to his house for his birthday, hoping his colleagues would vouch for him. However, the fear surrounding the various rumors in Harlem led to this awkward situation. Ronald offered to go back with him and reveal his identity to his neighbors. It's no use, Ronnie. It's not that I don't believe your good intentions. It's just that these brothers, they only believe their own thoughts. Unless I can invite a few white girls to a party, they won't think I've really made it big. Ronald patted Jean on the shoulder, offering a few words of comfort, and the two walked out of the filming location together. Alan Parker noticed the crowd's indifference towards Jean and Ronald's words of comfort. What's the schedule for tomorrow's shoot? He called back to the assistant director. Our movie starts filming in Europe next month. If you'd like, you can come with me to audition for the female lead. I think you have a lot of talent, Antonia. Ronald called out to Antonia, who was dodging a man harassing her on the street. Need any help? The man, clearly of Italian descent, took out a business card and handed it to Ronald. Don't get me wrong, I'm a director. I just want to get your friend involved in a movie. I mean no harm. If you're a film director, you should know that you can't directly contact actors, you should contact their agents. Ronald smiled coldly, tore the business card to shreds, and threw it on the ground. Jean caught up from behind, flanking the man and flexing his muscles. Seeing he might be outmatched, the man began to retreat. No, I meant no harm. I just wanted to ask your friend to make a movie. Then he turned and walked away quickly. Fuck you, Jean gestured to him. Antonia, are you alright? How did this happen? Isn't this a scene from a movie? Does this guy want you to make that kind of movie? Ronald was somewhat amused and exasperated. Who knew a movie plot would actually happen in real life? This is just our daily routine. It's very close to Times Square. When I was in high school for performing arts across the street, I often ran into them. They would follow you home, but they wouldn't force you. They would just keep tempting you. If you wanted to become famous and fell for their tricks, you'd end up like Coco in the movie. What? You also went to high school for performing arts? I didn't know that. Remember when I told you I was in Greece? I was one of the 10 dancers chosen in New York. I was only 16 years old, and I asked a friend to make a fake birth certificate for the movie. Antonia became particularly talkative when she saw Ronald. The two of them and Jean walked along the road to the parking lot. I danced really well, and they gave me an extra scene, right behind the male and female leads at their graduation ball. Then Grease was released, and the acting school found out I'd been going to the film set without permission while I was studying, so they expelled me. I then got a scholarship to an American ballet school and used my movie earnings to pay for my living expenses. Reaching Ronald's car, the three spotted Lucy again. She had also come out to see Jean. The four looked at each other and burst into laughter. Ronald suggested they have another meal together to celebrate Jean's birthday. You'll succeed, Gene. I feel this movie will be a huge hit, Antonia comforted him after learning of Gene's cold reception. Why do you say this movie will be a hit? Ronald asked. I can sense people's true talent. Director Allen is very good at distinguishing between what's real and what's fabricated. I feel the movie will be a success. Cheers. Gene was very happy, picking up his Coke and clinking glasses with everyone. He loved hearing this now. What do you think, Ronnie? Will our movie be a hit? Gene still trusted Ronald the most. I don't know if the movie will be a hit, but most people who come to see this kind of movie are there for the hot dances and songs. Our dance today was really good, so the box office should be good. Ronald forked a piece of food and put it in his mouth. In the movie High School Rock, which I was in, the audience would start clapping and stomping their feet every time the Ramones started playing. Ronald took another sip of Coke. A lot of viewers come for exciting things, like songs they haven't heard before, or dances they haven't seen before, so when they go back and recommend it to their friends, they can say which song or dance was good. For example, right now I can tell you which theme song the Ramones sang in High School Rock was good, and the dance the girls danced in the gym was also good, worth watching. Then they'll also say that the dance in the famous cafeteria was good. Then let's go see it. We wanted to see it last time but didn't get to, Antonia said. 4 tickets to Rock High School. Here you go. The ticket seller handed 4 combo tickets from the window. Are there many people watching? Ronald wanted to inquire about the box office. Listen for yourself. The ticket seller pointed to the lobby. A series of loud stomping sounds followed by cheers. So popular? How exciting. Ronald thought to himself, his share of the profits looks promising. When their 4-person screening started, they took their Cokes and popcorn and sat down in the theater. The opening sign for Vince Lombardi High School was a photo Ronald and Cameron had taken together. Sunlight shone on the school building, and director Alan Ekush jokingly added sound effects for the bird song, as if saying cheap. Cheap, satirizing Roger Coleman's stinginess. Ronald laughed out loud, drawing angry glares from the surrounding audience. This kid must be mentally challenged, grinning like an idiot at the beginning. Ah, this part is so beautiful, Antonia exclaimed as the scene showed Ronald's rebellious teenage girl Liv and the studious Cade walking hand in hand in the sunset. Ha, is that you with a mustache? That's hilarious. Ronald, you're not my type, Gene shouted exaggeratedly. Boom, the roof exploded at the end, and the principal fainted from anger. The 3 of them and the audience cheered and screamed together. Ronald, who had seen it countless times, didn't feel anything. But seeing everyone's love for certain scenes made him quite happy. Ronald, that's your name. Look, Antonia shook his arm, pointing to the special thanks on the screen. I want to leave my name on the screen too, that was Gene saying. Chapter 92 Improvisation. The dance and music department's main events were filmed in the cafeteria, and now the crew was filming the acting department's scenes. Today they were filming the scene with Latino student Ralph Garcia. The actor playing Ralph was Barry Miller. He was a veteran, 21 years old this year. He played a high school student who committed suicide in Saturday Night Fever, which made John Travolta famous in 1977. Later, he played a villain in the CBS TV series Wonder Woman. He was one of the few faces in movies that audiences weren't already familiar with. Barry told everyone that he graduated from Stella Adler's acting school, and Ronald had high expectations for his acting. Hey, you don't understand, I'm just making noise. Ronald looked at Jim, the black teacher who was acting opposite Barry. Jim put his hand on his bald head and lowered his head helplessly. Cut, Barry, what are you doing? How did you even say your lines? Why can't you understand them at all? The director angrily called for a stop. Today's filming had already seen several instances of Barry improvising, significantly slowing down the shooting schedule. Alan, I feel that Ralph Garcia is someone who likes to delve into acting, just like me. He's studying Marlon Brando's way of speaking. Can't you just read your lines properly from the script? Alan, I think you're a director who strives for excellence and shouldn't be limited by the script. I feel that this way of portraying Ralph is better. A buzz of whispers erupted as the extras sitting in the teacher's seat began to murmur amongst themselves. This was the first time someone in the crew had openly challenged the director's authority. The actors' dissatisfaction with Alan had been building up, and today someone finally broke the ice. The dancers were unhappy that he was filming without regard for safety risks, and the local American technicians also resented the director's favoritism towards their fellow British Islanders. However, These were all conflicts that had accumulated for the sake of work, ultimately aimed at making a better film. As long as filming could continue, everyone forgot about the old problems. Today was the first time someone questioned the director's decision from an artistic perspective. After all, most of the other lead actors were newcomers, and only Barry Miller felt he was qualified to discuss the acting style with the director. Previously, everyone had been intimidated by Alan Parker's portrayal of the black teacher Jim. Now that someone had taken the lead, many grievances surfaced, and for the first time, everyone felt that Alan wasn't always right. Alan Parker's face flushed slightly, but now wasn't the time to lose his temper. Alan announced a pause in filming and pulled Barry aside for a heart-to-heart talk. Outside, everyone was buzzing with discussion, venting their frustrations about the director's harsh treatment of them. Ronald watched coldly from the sidelines. This was a significant challenge to the director's authority. If not handled properly, it could cause many more problems in future filming. With a snap, the door to the inner room opened, and Barry Miller walked out triumphantly. Alan announced that the scene would be filmed differently. The script supervisor hurriedly picked up a pen and began revising the script according to Alan's instructions. Afterwards, she would retype it, photocopy it, and replace the corresponding parts of the script. Recording, camera, action. Ralph, you're slurring your words again, Jim was rehearsing with Barry Miller. I don't understand, Barry replied in clearer speech. That's how the great Marlon Brando read his lines. That's how James Dean read his lines. They were the greatest actors in the world, but nobody could understand what they were saying. A few chuckles escaped the extras. These two were indeed Stella Adler's students, plus Robert De Niro. Could slurring be the secret of Stella's school? Ronald began to daydream. Cut. This one's been developed, the director instructed the script supervisor. Next, we'll be moving to Performance Space 122 in the East Village. The address is. We'll meet at Performance Space 122 at 2 p.m. The camera crew will go by truck, the extras will be on 2 buses, and the rest of you will have to hitchhike. The first assistant director began arranging transportation for everyone, and each person went to their assistant to get an address. Ronald drove Gene and Antonia to the new filming location. He was thinking about the consequences of Barry Miller's challenge to the director that morning. Gene and Antonia were also talking about the director. We're not afraid of him at all, Gene said. What does his trouble with Jim have to do with us? Public high school teachers can't control us anyway. Of course you're not afraid of him, he's a little afraid of you. He relays everything through Ronnie, Antonia laughed. Ronald, listening to their conversation from the driver's seat, glanced at Gene through the rearview mirror. There was definitely some truth to that. After all, Alan was English and more than 15 years older than him. They completely misunderstood the mindset of American high school students. Influenced by the Vietnam War, the hippie movement, and the civil rights movement, today's young people simply don't take public high school teachers seriously. If a teacher dared to discipline them, they'd likely be fired on the spot by a troublemaker like Gene. Trying to establish authority in the students' minds by intimidating them was a miscalculation. The new generation of American teenagers doesn't obey the authority of their elders much, but rather their idols, like the punk rock band Ramones. The car arrived at the 122 Performing Arts Space, and Ronald and the other two got out to take a look. The so-called Performing Arts Space was also an abandoned high school. However, it had been occupied by New York artists and transformed into drama rehearsal space and small theater, serving as a center for avant-garde theater. Producer David De Silva approached. Ronnie, you go to the set this afternoon too. I heard about what happened this morning. Keep an eye on things there, and let me know if Barry Miller does anything. Ronald nodded. He wasn't supposed to be on set this afternoon for Ralph Garcia and Doris's love scene. But now that David, who paid his salary, had given the order, he had to listen. I have many fathers. They come to my house, some even pay rent. Barry Miller recited his lines. Ralph Garcia's character is a Latino from Harlem, in some ways even worse off than black people, because many charitable donations don't go to Latinos. He has 5 siblings, mainly relying on church aid and his single mother occasionally hooking up with a man. Cut. A close-up shot was taken for Barry's monologue. The main shot was finished, next was Barry's monologue. Alan's style rarely used over-the-shoulder shots, instead using close-ups to show the character's dialogue, which was different from traditional Hollywood techniques. The advantage of this approach is probably that it allows for a clearer portrayal of the character's emotions. The disadvantage is that the audience sometimes may not understand who the character is speaking to, especially when there are more than two characters present. However, Alan Parker is, after all, a renowned British director, so there shouldn't be any problems. You have to understand Puerto Rican women, they don't sick men out of love, but to support their children. Cut, cut, cut. Alan angrily stopped filming. Barry, you have to stick to the lines, darling. Alan grabbed Barry Miller's shoulder, pinched his cheek, and threatened. Ronald also felt that Barry Miller was going too far. Roger Corman once said that if actors can improvise, they should be given that opportunity. But this absolutely does not include arbitrarily changing lines between the main shot and the dialogue shot. You can improvise in a few takes of a wide-angle main shot, and you can improvise in a few takes of a close-up dialogue shot. But it's best not to say A in the main shot and then say something completely unrelated B in the dialogue shot. Doing so will create editing difficulties. The transition between the main shot and the dialogue shots was disjointed. This Barry Miller seemed overly focused on his acting, as if he wanted to unleash all his talent to show someone. No, Alan. My performance is based on the situation. At this time, in this environment, Ralph Garcia should say these lines. It wasn't something I deliberately designed, it was a natural expression. You can't restrict an actor's natural expression. Barry, what am I supposed to do with you? You're a talented actor, but you need to distinguish between primary and secondary elements during filming. You're seriously slowing down the shooting schedule, and we're just a small production. Alan tried to reason with Barry Miller. Barry, could you limit the improvisation to the scope of each shot? Otherwise, it'll be difficult to edit in post-production. Ronald tried to chime in, trying to prevent Barry's improvisation from interfering too much with the filming and post-production editing. Hey, who are you? Don't interfere with the conversation between a great actor and director. Ronald raised his hands in surrender and stepped back to Maureen Tiffany, who played Doris. Barry's always like this, he had scenes whenever he's with me. I'm getting annoyed. He's always making Alan work overtime, Maureen complained to Ronald in a low voice. Ronald turned around in surprise and glanced at Maureen. Maybe he has his own reasons. Alan and Barry finally reached a temporary agreement, and the director called for the third take. Record? Camera? Action. Barry Miller, holding a wine glass, walked to the window, paused for 2 seconds with his back to the camera, then turned around. My mom has a spare house, and she always rents it to a man, so I have a new dad. Good, Ronald thought to himself. This performance was quite smooth. Most new dads only last a day. He started improvising again, and Ronald covered his face. Cut. Alan stepped forward and slapped Barry Miller across the face. Slap. Stop messing around. Say your lines, in the order of the script. Behave yourself and stop chasing girls. The following scene was surprisingly good. Barry obediently finished his lines, and his final crying scene was very emotionally genuine. Maureen Tiffany also finished her scene, saying bye to Ronald and the others, and got into the car with Alan. The director got a new car. Chapter 93: The Director's New Toy. After Barry Miller suffered a double blow, Ronald told the producer about the minor conflict. Producer David, knowing that the director had publicly revealed his relationship with Maureen Tiffany, instructed Ronald to continue secretly monitoring Barry Miller to observe any unusual behavior after the incident. Fights stemming from jealousy on set are not uncommon in Hollywood. However, Ronald didn't think Barry had the guts to challenge the director, and after Alan revealed their relationship, he obediently conceded defeat. Afterwards, Barry Miller became more cooperative, and filming progressed quickly. Although most of the scenes in Famous throughout the world were indoors, the acting students had some outdoor scenes. These mainly depicted the daily lives of the three acting students. This morning's scene was an outdoor one, a simple one. Doris, who is Jewish, and Montgomery, who is gay, are good friends. The two are practicing their acting on a Manhattan street. Doris, pretending to be blind, is holding Montgomery's hand, and the two walk towards the camera while chatting. None of the pedestrians realized that Doris, with her white cane, was pretending to be blind. The last pedestrian, even convinced by Doris's acting, thought she was genuinely blind and dropped a few coins into the stainless steel cup in her hand. Producer David De Silva applied for filming permission for the relevant streets, a total of 2 hours. Police helped cordon off both ends of the street, and cinematographer Michael Saracen directed his assistants to set up the camera tracks. As the two actors walked towards the camera would pull back, creating the feeling that the camera was following the actor's gradual advance. "You should wait until your new toy arrives before filming this shot, Alan," said cinematographer Michael Saracen. "That way we could have the rhythm of the opening scene of Saturday Night Fever." Ronald had seen Saturday Night Fever. After John Travolta's opening scene, he walked through the streets of Brooklyn to the disco rhythm of the Bee Gees. The camera followed his shoes closely, as if someone was using a shoulder-mounted camera to follow the rhythm of Travolta's walk. As a viewer, it was quite common. But after spending time on film sets, he knew how incredibly difficult this shot was to execute. Shoulder-mounted cameras are prone to causing camera shake. Maintaining a steady, slow-motion shot already requires incredible arm strength, and cinematographers who can do it command high prices. Ronald couldn't imagine how to film a shot that kept the camera steady while the camera moved with a character's footsteps. Now, the director of photography seemed to be using specialized equipment for this kind of shot. "This toy's only for rent, not for sale. Currently, only the inventor can operate it. Stan used it for months, and it's only my turn now. He'll be arriving in New York tomorrow." Oh? Kubrick is a tech fanatic, using so many new technologies in his new film, The Shining. "You know him, our fellow Englishman loves new toys. How long can we use the toy?" the director of photography asked. "Only for one day. You'll see then. Attention all departments, live shooting begins." The first assistant director, holding a megaphone, began calling all the extras to their positions. Although it was an ordinary street scene, all the pedestrians were extras. America is a society governed by law. Filming strangers' faces in a movie without permission could result in a defamation lawsuit. Besides, the crew wasn't short of money. A working woman enters the frame from the left, a man in a baseball cap from the right, a girl with braids bumps into Montgomery, a lady handing over change counts 3, 2, 1. Clang, a coin falls into a stainless steel cup. Cut. Great. Garrett Brown, a tall man, holds a stick with a camera mounted on top and a rectangular metal block for balancing below. "Is this the equipment used to film Stallone climbing the stairs in Rocky?" Alan Parker asks. "No, that's the first generation. This is my latest improved second-generation Steadicam." Garrett Brown pats the equipment in his hand. Steadicam stands for camera stabilizer. It dampens the vibrations caused by a photographer's vigorous running, turning them into a slower, clearer image. Like the shot they're about to film of Doris and Ralph Garcia descending the stairs at the subway entrance and boarding the subway car. The cinematographer, using a Steadicam, could follow the film relentlessly, producing clear, shaky footage. Ever since Sylvester Stallone's iconic climb of the Philadelphia Monument in Rocky shocked the industry, many directors wanted to include a similar scene in their films. To ensure a quiet filming environment, the producers contacted the New York Subway Company and secured a special overnight service at a station with no trains running. Only one extra train would run after the subway closed. This gave the crew just one chance to film, regardless of the quality of the acting or cinematography. The station had 2 relatively high steps. Garrett Brown practiced twice before filming began. The lighting, actors, and cinematographer were all focused on perfect execution for a successful take. Maureen Tiffany and Barry Miller descended the steps from the subway entrance. Garrett Brown, holding the Steadicam, backed down the steps, filming the 2 actors. They played a couple recounting the success of Ralph Garcia's stand-up comedy. After descending 2 flights of stairs, the 2 stood in the subway waiting area. Garrett Brown, who had initially been filming from the front, moved to behind them, maintaining a perfectly steady frame throughout. Whoosh, the last extra subway train roared in. A gust of wind whipped Maureen Tiffany's hair around. They smiled and said goodbye. Doris entered the subway, the doors closed, and the 2, separated by the subway car doors, continued to share their dreams for the future, their shared American dream. Cut. Alan Parker and Garrett Brown, who was operating the camera stabilizer, confirmed the footage and announced the shot was complete. Ronald looked at the amazing toy, wanting to play with it. Garrett Brown noticed his interest and handed him a business card. "If any other production crews need my services in the future, feel free to contact me, whether it's handheld, mounted on a car, or aerial shooting. My camera stabilizer can help you get the shot you want." "He's quite the curious and energetic young man, isn't he, Alan?" Maureen Tiffany remarked. "Yes, very energetic," Alan Parker said, squinting. "Perhaps his curiosity is too strong." Chapter 94. A play within a play. Asshole, Ronald held up a large sign with a line written on it. "Asshole," the members of the Rocky Horror Show Club in the audience shouted in unison. "Where's your neck?" Ronald held up another sign. "Where's your neck?" the members shouted back. "Cheers." Ronald picked up another sign. The members began to cheer. Ronald raised the sign higher. The cheers from the members grew louder and louder. Ronald lowered the sign, and the members quieted down. "Great, use this intensity during the actual filming," Alan Parker shouted, indicating his satisfaction. Ronald contacted the president of the Rocky Horror Show Fan Club for the director. They were delighted to appear in another movie alongside their favorite film. They agreed to participate without paying a penny. The members dressed up and wore their best cosplay costumes. Even the water guns to imitate rain were the two thickest ones available. After the extras finished rehearsing, the director of photography began directing the lighting crew to set up the lighting. Capturing a truly dark cinematic environment, with only faces illuminated by the screen, is a true test of the lighting director's skills. While setting up the lighting, Ronald chatted briefly with his club acquaintances. Although many new films had been added to the midnight screenings, they still maintained their stronghold. 2 theaters were still showing the Rocky Horror Show. The midnight screenings were no longer dominated by a single film. Besides High School of Rock, which Ronald was involved in, several other horror films shared the market. While High School of Rock received good reviews, it only occupied about a quarter of the theater screenings. It doesn't have the same dominance as the Rocky Horror Show used to have in the midnight screenings, the fan club president remarked. With the lighting set up, the director filmed the audience's reactions. Ronald returned to the stage, holding up a sign to indicate the appropriate response. He was behind the camera, so the image of him holding the sign wouldn't be captured on camera. The audience would only see the cheers of the club members. There's no need to worry about the Rocky Horror Show not being played on stage. Through post-production editing and mixing, the clips shown on screen will be added to the film, making the audience feel like they're watching another movie within a movie. The cinematographer finished shooting the reaction shots, moved the camera off stage, and began directing the cosplay song and dance sequence on stage. Directioning involves arranging the camera's position and movement to ensure the actors remain within the camera's field of view. The lighting crew's actions must coordinate with the direction. A dozen or so men cosplaying as maids lined up on stage, preparing to rehearse their dance and song seen on screen. Ronald explained the camera angles and framing to them, instructing them not to look directly at the camera. These cosplay enthusiasts perform this scene at every event, so they're very familiar with it and require no further rehearsal. Alan Parker watched from behind the camera with satisfaction. Does Ronnie always hang out with these eccentric people? I think he gets along really well with them, the director asked an assistant who had been on set. He gets along with everyone, and he's good with Gene too, the assistant replied. Ronald, unaware that the director was asking him about gossip, quietly retreated to a safe position out of the camera's view after informing the cosplayers. He left the center of the stage to them and the director. The film crew was a hierarchical place, and Ronald was well aware of his position. After finishing his own work, he relinquished the commanding role to the director. He didn't want to repeat Barry Miller's mistake of competing with the director for a place on the power ladder. The cosplayers began to dance. Maureen Tiffany, playing Doris, her eyes filled with longing, took off her coat and rushed onto the stage to dance with him. Barry Miller, playing Ralph, sat in his seat with a very surprised expression. Doris had overcome her shyness and begun her acting career. Very good, shoot like this from now on. Director Alan Parker signaled to the camera crew to start focusing and preparing for filming. Doris's range of movement in the shot was quite large. Whether the focus puller could keep up with her and maintain focus was a test. Ronald felt the director had been watching him a lot more today, even though he wasn't looking for anything. It was as if the director was watching him. So he decided to keep a low profile and quietly left the set. Aside from the producer's instruction to keep an eye on Barry Miller, Ronald wasn't actually required to be at the theater today. Perhaps the director was a little surprised by his presence in an inappropriate setting. Ronald started his car and drove to Harlan High School, where they were rehearsing for the next few days. This was one of the scenes Ronald had dreamed of. Bruno, a genius student who mixed music with an electronic synthesizer, always lacked confidence in his music. Bruno's father, Angelo, took Bruno's cassette tapes, installed 2 large speakers in his taxi, and drove to the school gate, blasting the music. All the art school students, hearing this novel song, rushed out of the school and started dancing in the streets. The students filled the streets, forcing passing cars to stop. They even climbed onto the roofs of cars and danced freely. Choreographer Louis Falco had done extensive preparation for this largest dance scene in the entire film. The entire scene featured a large-scale dance sequence with over 60 dancers, each dancer's entrance and initiation meticulously planned. The choreographer, taking advantage of a break in the director's filming of the acting students' scenes, had already guided the dancers in rehearsals for 3 days. The dancers were divided into ballet and jazz groups, gracefully performing to Donna Summer's Hot Things. Ronald didn't understand the music, only finding the choreography layered and sophisticated. The theme song for the scene was Fame, but composer Michael Gore hadn't finished it yet, so during rehearsals, they played the similarly rhythmic disco track Hot Things. This familiar disco tune made Ronald's ears itch. He quickly nodded to Antonia and Jean in the crowd and escaped the rehearsal area. Back at Harlan High School, he spotted producer David Da Silva chatting with a woman in a suit. "Nancy, I originally thought we could collaborate like we did with Travolta's White Suit and Weekend Night Fever. David, we're old friends. I initially contacted you hoping to do business like the Travolta White Suit deal. But undeniably, Travolta is the only male lead in Weekend Night Fever, while your film has 8 leads. JCPenney won't gamble on that opportunity, alright. I thought we could make a win-win situation." Da Silva shook hands with a manager-looking man goodbye. It seemed the producers wanted to do some merchandise development with JCPenney, selling the male and female leads' clothes in the department store. If that were the case, would his self-invented leg warmers have a chance? Ronald stopped Ms. Nancy at the exit. "Hello, Ms. Nancy, I'm Ronald Lee, the screenwriter for the film. I invented a dance accessory for the crew, which is very popular with the dancers. I wonder if you could take a look and see if it has commercial potential for collaboration with JCPenney." Ronald boldly stated his ambition. "Ronald? Are you really a screenwriter? I think you're more like an actor on set." Nancy wasn't averse to people recommending their products. She'd encountered many inventors in business development. But she'd never met a clumsy conman as young as this, claiming to be a screenwriter. "This is my business card." Ronald handed over his portrait photographer's card. "Besides being a photographer, I'm also a film student at NYU. I'm credited as the screenwriter for this film." Ronald then pulled out the script, showing Nancy his name on the cover. "Oh, I must say, I'm a little surprised," Nancy said after seeing Ronald's name. "I invented a garment accessory called a leg warmer for dancers, and they seem to love it. I think it has great commercial potential. Do you have time to see how they look wearing my invention?" "Why not? You've already surprised me once today. I don't mind surprising you again." Ronald led Nancy to the rehearsal room, where Jean and Antonio were both wearing leg warmers, practicing the choreography he'd created for them. "This is my invention, the leg warmers. The short version covers the ankles, and the long version covers the knees. I've already had my lawyer file a design patent." Ronald began explaining to Nancy how the leg warmers looked on. "Removing the bottom of the socks actually creates a better visual effect. I must say, it's a great design concept." Nancy praised the leg warmers highly. "So, is there a chance my invention could be sold in JCPenney?" Ronald asked excitedly. "No, Ronald. You misunderstood me," Nancy, JCPenney's business development manager, said. "Department stores are a unique business model. People come to JCPenney with a shopping mindset, so we offer products that are frequently purchased and in line with fashion trends. Your invention has a very good design concept, but it's aimed at a very small market, dancers. JCPenney won't put it on the shelves." "Ah, I see." Ronald suddenly understood. Although the leg warmers were very popular with dancers, non-dancers didn't have this need. Therefore, it could only be sold to dancers. The market was too small. There was no possibility of it entering department stores. "Thank you, Ms. Nancy. I'm sorry to have taken up your time. It's all right. I rarely see an artist with your business acumen. Feel free to contact me if you have a new film or invention." Nancy handed Ronald a business card. "Also, if I were you, I'd consider opening a shop selling these leg warmers outside a dance school. Seize this opportunity to make some quick money. This stuff isn't technically difficult. Every mother who sees it can modify a set for her daughter. Millions of ballet mothers will copy your designs. Can you sue them all? So why not capitalize on the trend the film might create among dance students and make a quick buck before the pirates appear?" Chapter 95 Starting Over. After finishing filming at the cinema, Director Alan Parker visited Harlan High School to check on preparations for the film's most important dance scene. "Lewis, how's the dance going?" Parker asked choreographer Louis Falco. "I've divided the dancers into two teams, a mix of ballet and jazz. After rushing out of the school gates, they separate. One team intercepts a Cadillac, jumps onto the roof, and continues the ballet movements. The other team goes to a taxi on the other side of the street and performs movements around it," Falco explained his choreography to Parker. "Show me your work, Louis. Don't just describe it," Parker interrupted, demanding to see the dance. "Okay," Falco nodded, twirling his earring and gesturing to his assistant, signaling the dancers to begin. "I need something hot, baby, tonight." Donna Summer's Hot Something rang out, and dancers gracefully filed out of the school gates, leaping across the street and dancing around cars. Then, the crowd lifted the dancers onto the car roofs, where they danced in unison, both on and under the vehicles. The theme song wasn't finished yet, so they were using this disco song with a similar rhythm as a temporary substitute. No, this is too deliberate. I can't use a single take. I want these kids to start dancing as soon as they rush out of the school gates." Alan Parker shook his head as he watched. "It has to be redone. You need to come up with a plan before tomorrow's actual filming, Louis." The director's expression was serious. Choreographer Louis Falco was stunned, not knowing what was going on. He didn't quite understand why the director was rejecting the results of his 3 days of rehearsals. And as the choreographer, he couldn't tell the other dancers that he didn't understand the director's intentions. Otherwise, his reputation for being unprofessional would spread throughout the crew the next day. "I want to see a new choreography before filming starts tomorrow morning." After giving the order, the director went to discuss the arrangements for tomorrow's on-set filming with the producer. "Gene, what do you mean by rushing out and starting to dance?" Choreographer Louis Falco took Gene's arm and asked his comrade. "How should I know? You're the choreographer, Louis." Gene impatiently pulled his arm away from the choreographer's hand. Louis Falco looked disappointed at Gene's unwillingness to make physical contact. He withdrew his hand and began to play with his earring. "What, Gene, are you no longer on our side?" Gene said. "No, I just don't want to show it in public. I don't want the opinions of those people in Harlem to apply to the set." I understand. "No, you don't understand. Producer Mr. De Silva contacted me and said he's going to make a TV series based on the movie, and invited me to continue playing Leroy." "Oh, Gene, you're going to be famous, so the producer told me that I shouldn't come out of the closet," Gene muttered. "If you really don't know what to do, you can ask Ronald, he always has a way." Gene offered another suggestion. "Oh," the choreographer replied, "he's just very resourceful. He's the one who got me into the crew. I saw one of his musicals in Hollywood, and there was a credit to thank him." "Okay, I'll try asking him." Lift, onto the roof, jump. Louis Falco showed Ronald the dance moves he had choreographed over 3 days. Then Alan said my choreography was too deliberate, and he wanted to just rush out and start dancing. Ronald, who had been brought in by Gene to offer suggestions, stared at the group dance movements, comparing them to the dance sequence in his dream. "Why do they seem to be dancing according to predetermined moves?" Ronald asked, pointing to the 2 dancers on the roof. "That's the choreographer's job, to find suitable dance moves for each of them, to bring out each person's characteristics. No, I mean, this scene is about them hearing music downstairs and then rushing out of the school gate to start dancing." "Right, that's right." Choreographer Louis Falco still didn't understand. "Then why do they have to dance according to a pre-designed routine? In this situation, shouldn't they just rush into the crowd and dance however they want?" Ronald said confidently. "That's how the dance in the dream was. Everyone danced their own way, each person dancing according to their own feelings. But doesn't it mean there's no choreography?" "No, this isn't a Broadway musical. Alan wanted to make it into a film reflecting the social realities of America," Ronald said, drawing on his own experience. "Look, the plot even includes scenes about deceiving people into making adult films, abortion, and coming out. He definitely won't film this dance in the style of a Broadway musical adaptation like Grease." The director's "just go out and dance" probably means exactly what he said. "Louis, you're a professional choreographer, you should know better how to meet the director's requirements." "You're right." Choreographer Louis Falco fell into thought. "I can choose a style for each dancer, but on set, let them improvise based on that. Antonia, I have a whole fame plan. After the movie is released, There will be a TV series. Would you like to continue playing Hillary in the TV series? Producer David Da Silva began talking to the lead actresses to understand their wishes. My dream is to dance ballet. Acting in movies is just a way for me to make money. Antonia decisively rejected the producer's temptation. Don't decide so soon, Antonia. You'll have plenty of opportunities after the movie is released. Thank you for your kind offer, Mr. Da Silva, but I've already received an invitation from Mr. Balanchine of the New York City Ballet. I'll join the New York City Ballet after graduating from ballet school next year. Well, congratulations. David Da Silva crossed Antonia off his list of potential lead actresses for the spin-off series. I want something hot, baby, tonight. Louis Barco turned on the tape recorder, and over 60 dancers screamed and rushed into the street. Completely free reign, they could dance whatever they wanted, with whomever they wanted. Several daring dancers jumped onto the roof of a prop truck, making it bounce loudly. A few dancers with already superior skills even started one-on-one dance battles. Clap clap clap, the director applauded. This is exactly what I wanted, Louis. This is the scene I wanted. How did you manage to get them to improve so much in such a short time? It was Ronald who told me your plan. This is a realistic film, not a Broadway musical. The song and dance in this film need to conform to the logic of reality, not like a Broadway musical where the audience dances just for the sake of watching. I just had them rush out and then improvise according to the style I chose for them. Very good, Louis, very good. Alan Parker patted the choreographer on the shoulder. Is Ronald one of you? I heard he and Jean are quite close. I don't know about them. We have our own privacy, just like heterosexuals, the choreographer replied, twirling his earring. Alan, what do you think? I sincerely invite you to join the production of the TV series. After all, you brought these characters to life. Producer David Da Silva chatted with the director about the TV series. The film is going for an R rating, but the TV series must maintain a PG rating. How will your TV series handle the R-rated content? Alan Parker asked. I'm planning to change the character a bit. Montgomery is no longer gay, and there's no teenage pregnancy or abortion. Isn't that castrating the character? I'm not interested in PG-rated TV shows. Fine, but at least don't ruin things for me, Alan. Alan Parker asked me if you and Ronald. You need to watch him. I heard there's a coming-out plot for Montgomery's character in the script. Choreographer Louis Parker approached Jean and whispered. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96 I Can Find a New Job in 2 weeks. A section of 46th Street in Midtown Manhattan was closed off by police early in the morning to facilitate filming for the movie Fame. The crew moved from Harlan High School to the exterior of a stone building there to shoot exterior scenes for the theme song Dance. The reason for choosing this building as the school's entrance in the film was simple. Alan Parker liked the entrance to Performing Arts High School, so they found a similar one on 46th Street. The section of road between the two intersections on either side of this entrance was closed for 3 days by the producers for filming. One end of the road, intersecting with 46th Street, was also requisitioned for parking prop vehicles. To ensure the success of this crucial scene, the crew hired an additional 30 on-set assistants, equipped with Motorola walkie-talkies, to assist with the filming. Ronald stood behind the camera, watching these on-set assistants wearing matching white t-shirts with Fame printed on the front, listening to the instructions of director of photography Michael Saracen. My child's father is an Oscar winner. The words on the back of the white t-shirts brought a knowing smile to Ronald's face. Once the director announces filming, your main task is to maintain order for the vehicles entering the set. After the actor playing Anglu drives the taxi with a loudspeaker into the area, the convoy will begin preparing. After reviewing the new choreography from last night, Alan Parker decided to add more realism to the scene. Instead of parking on the road beforehand, all the vehicles would line up on the crosswalk intersecting 46th Street, then slowly drive into 46th Street one by one. The goal was to make the scene of the dancers stopping the vehicles look as realistic as possible. All vehicles enter slowly according to their numbers. The speed limit is no more than 6 miles per hour. I repeat, no more than 6 miles per hour. Prepare for a rehearsal. Seeing that everyone's tasks were assigned, the director gave the order to the first assistant director. Ronald stepped back out of the director's sight and stood next to an apple crate. The assistant director picked up the walkie-talkie and ordered the cars to enter. The camera operator directed the team to slowly push the equipment forward. The dancers rushed out of the gate and danced in the street to the disco music from the sound team. According to the original plan, the lead car should have braked, followed by the rest of the convoy, with drivers sticking out of their seats to observe the situation. However, the lead driver seemed to be playing a prank on the dancers. He first faked braking, causing the front of the car to lurch forward. As the dancers stopped to prepare to dance, he then leaned forward half a foot. This angered the dancer in front of the car. He had only been shown from behind on camera, not getting a close-up shot, and now the driver had tricked him. Enraged, he pounded on the car hood, demanding to know what the driver was doing. The driver, an Italian, got out of the car and began speaking in Italian, then shoved one of the dancers in the chest. This action further fueled the dancer's anger, and he tried to retaliate by pushing the driver back. However, he was tall and thin, and fighting wasn't his forte. Unexpected reinforcements came from the camera crew. The camera operator handed the equipment to his assistant and led the pushers forward, shoving the driver far away. "What the hell are you doing? Don't you know that not following the plan on set can kill everyone?" It turned out the operator was carrying the camera on his shoulder, filming along the extended line of the car's path. If the driver faked braking halfway through the shot, the operator behind the camera, watching the viewfinder, would be the one in trouble. The Italian driver, backed by the truck drivers union, hadn't expected the unexpected challenge from the burly man from the British Isles and was momentarily at a disadvantage. Alan Parker had the director of photography, Michael Saracen, call his men over. He walked up to the Italian driver and said, "I really liked your fake braking, it made the actor's performance very realistic. But be careful during the actual filming. Don't use such dangerous tricks again, understand?" The driver, of course, understood the director's meaning, knowing the director was on his side, and gave the director a thumbs up. Then, in the instant Alan Parker turned and walked away, he quickly flipped his thumb upside down, taunting the camera operator. The camera operator smiled contemptuously, pointed to his own eyes, and then held up two fingers, pointing them at the Italian's eyes. The message was clear: "I'll be watching you. Don't let me catch you messing around again, you scoundrel." In British film sets, class barriers have long existed. Directors and actors belong to the upper class, speaking with authentic upper-class accents or Shakespearean dramatic flair. Camera operators, script supervisors, prop masters, sound recordists, and other similar jobs belong to the working class, mostly speaking with a Cockney accent from London's East End. They are under the command of the first assistant director, much like in the British Army, where only a sergeant major can command ordinary soldiers. Although director Alan Parker claimed to have grown up in London's East End, he didn't speak with a Cockney accent, and consequently, the British crew members didn't consider him one of their own. The short, stocky camera operator looked down on the skinny, sly Italian driver, much like how one British hero could take on 7 sissies on a football field. The first assistant director picked up the radio and started calling the truck drivers in the back. One by one, the cars slowly reversed out of 46th Street and back to their starting positions. Ronald watched as his assistants directed traffic like traffic cops, getting everything back to normal. The script supervisor patrolled with the props, making sure everything was back in its original position to avoid any continuity errors. The choreographer pointed out some issues to the dancers and led everyone back into the building to await the start of filming. For a large crew of over 100, restoring things to their original state took time, unlike rewinding on a video camera. By the time everything was back to normal and filming could begin, Ronald checked his watch. More than half an hour had passed. No wonder they requested 3 days of filming time. Filming like this, you can't even get a few shots a day, Ronald nodded to himself. This was experience that couldn't be learned from textbooks, you had to be there on a film set to learn it. Attention all departments, next shot, the shooting order for a large-scale scene was given via radio. Besides the main camera on a track in the middle of the street, there was a second camera, supposedly positioned on the second floor of a shop on the side of the street. With careful coordination, the director of photography ensured the two cameras wouldn't film each other to avoid continuity errors. The convoy, like traffic on a normal street, filed into 46th Street. "Give me something hot, baby, tonight," the dancers rushed into the street. The lead Italian-American driver didn't do any tricks in his car, he slammed on the brakes in front of the convoy. The second camera crew on the second floor captured the chain reaction of the sudden braking, a series of impressive stops. The lead driver, a seasoned filmmaker, had a perfect grasp of the director's intentions. Next, the dancers would climb onto the lead Cadillac and start dancing on its roof, while the other dancers twirled among the stopped cars, turning 46th Street into a disco. The lead Italian driver remembered the director's hint to surprise the extras and elicit a genuine reaction. He shifted to neutral and floored the accelerator. Boom, boom. The dancers who were about to climb onto the roof were startled and scattered in front of the vehicle. Cut. The director called a halt to the filming. The actors hadn't followed the script. Startled, they hadn't continued their performance and had stopped to the side. The hot-tempered camera operator, after putting the camera down, hopped forward a few steps. "Hey, what's wrong with you now?" he yelled, pointing at the Italian driver still inside the truck. The driver shifted into first gear, stepped on the gas, and the truck lurched forward a foot, stopping just in front of the operator. The driver had wanted to scare him. Why was he acting so arrogant? Didn't he know how powerful the Italian truck drivers' union was? The camera operator, a three-generation West Ham United fan from East London, couldn't take it anymore and punched the hood of the Cadillac, leaving a dent in the frame. The driver, who got out shouting and looking for trouble, was shoved to the ground by the operator. Now all the drivers in the convoy got out, demanding justice for the lead driver, while the dancers on the other side rushed forward, resolutely standing with the film crew. Ronald watched coldly. A fight seemed unlikely. Both sides were quite restrained. It appeared they would have to wait for the leaders to negotiate a solution. Sure enough, after the first assistant director negotiated with the driver's leader, both sides agreed. The film crew would compensate for the repair costs of the Cadillac's hood, and the driver promised to follow the director's instructions in future shoots and not launch surprise attacks again. In addition, the driver's side demanded that the camera operator verbally apologize to the driver he had pushed to the ground. Director Alan Parker pointed at the operator, without saying a word, raising his hand to signal him to apologize quickly and not delay filming. "You're a fucking coward, Alan." "I'm not apologizing to that sissy," the operator yelled at the director upon hearing this bizarre request. "Who apologizes to the loser after winning a fight?" "Michael, keep your men in check," the director said, avoiding direct confrontation with the operator. "Fuck you. I quit. I can't work for a coward," the camera operator shouted in a Cockney accent from East London. The dancers surrounded the man, defending him, since he had stood up for them and gotten into a fight with the Italian. "Don't worry," the man reassured the young men. "I have union protection. I'll get my full pay and a return ticket. With my qualifications, I can find a new job in 2 weeks. I'm glad I'm not working for that bastard anymore. He doesn't care about your safety or health at all. I've seen it all." Don't be fooled by Alan Parker's sissy talk about making movies that reflect humanity. I think he's the most inhuman person out there. Kids, you need to protect yourselves, understand? Chapter 97. The director who would do anything. On the first morning of filming the large-scale scenes, less than 2 hours into shooting, the crew lost their camera operator. Cinematographer Michael Saracen had to step in and act as the camera operator himself, what some call the cameraman. The director ordered everything to be restored to normal, preparing for the second official take. Amid the chaotic backing up scene, the American camera operator slipped off the set again to make a phone call. At 10 a.m., everything was back to normal, and Alan was about to announce the second take. "Recording? Camera, stop. This must stop," the same suited representative from the International Union of Cinematographers shouted, halting filming. "I've received another complaint that your cinematographer is also acting as the cameraman. This is explicitly prohibited by the union bylaws." The smug union representative handed director Alan Parker a stop work order. "Hey, men, you can't do this. We've stopped half of Midtown Manhattan surface traffic. We have a time limit, we can't stop work," the cinematographer yelled. 2 hours, I'll give you," the union official wasn't entirely unreasonable. "If you exceed 2 hours, you must hire a new, union-qualified camera operator. I won't accept a fucking union clerk telling me how to fuck make a movie," Alan Parker roared, charging at him. "Fine. As you wish," the union official revoked the 2-hour grace period. "Work must stop now until you find a suitable camera operator." Ronald was chatting with a few people in white t-shirts on a street corner. They had also witnessed a commotion. "Why can't the director of photography also be the operator?" Ronald asked one of the older men in white t-shirts. "I heard that in early Hollywood, the director of photography, who was also the person holding the camera, was responsible for checking if the footage matched their intentions. But the International Union of Cinematographers intervened strongly in the division of labor within film crews in the 1970s, mandating that the director of photography could not hold the camera and must hire a dedicated camera operator. From then on, in places where union power was strong, such as New York and Los Angeles, the camera operator was forcibly separated into two jobs. The advantage, of course, was that an extra position was created out of thin air." He, the man in the white t-shirt, laughed heartily. He was also one of the beneficiaries of the union. "And what about the disadvantages?" Ronald asked. "With an extra person, many subtle artistic ideas inevitably become distorted." "Ronald, come here." Producer David De Silva waved him over. "Hello, David, see that little guy in the baseball cap? He's our new operator. Your job is to make sure he doesn't touch the camera, doesn't interfere with filming, and only takes his salary." The producer still agreed to the union representative's extortion and hired one of his connections. "First time on a film set, buddy?" Ronald greeted the man in the baseball cap. Yes, it's my first time. My cousin said he could arrange for me to be the cinematographer." "You know what a cinematographer's best skill is? Metering. Very few people can accurately measure the intensity of the light on the first try." Ronald handed a mechanical light meter to the man in the baseball cap. "Every time the director shoots, you have to calibrate the intensity of the skylight. Whether we can get every shot depends on how well you meter. If the needle is less than 0, you have to immediately call the director of photography to stop." "Can I trust you, buddy? Our whole crew's success depends on you." "Oh, yes. Of course you can trust me." "How do I use this thing?" the man in the baseball cap asked eagerly. After Ronald taught the man in the baseball cap how to meter the sky, he walked over to the cinematographer, Michael Saracen. "Michael, before each shot, you have to look at that man in the baseball cap. Once he nods, you can shoot as usual. Anyway, it will always be a positive number." Ronald chuckled to himself. Cinematographer Michael Saracen glanced at the man in the baseball cap with a puzzled look. The man excitedly waved his light meter and nodded vigorously. "Camera," director Alan Parker confirmed before shooting. "Full speed." Michael Saracen looked away and focused on the next shot. "Action." The convoy of Cadillacs led the way, slowly pulling into 46th Street from the crosswalk. The music of Hot Things started playing again. Ronald and the man in the baseball cap stood together to prevent him from making any moves that might disrupt the shoot. Each time, the dancers rushed down the street, dancing differently than before. This time, a male dancer and Lucy were in front, stopping the Cadillac that had braked sharply. Lucy climbed onto the roof and began dancing to the disco rhythm. The Italian-American driver, again following the director's instructions, wanted to surprise the dancers with some tricks to elicit a genuine reaction. After stopping the car and letting the dancers climb onto the roof, he gently pressed the accelerator, and the car lurched forward. The dancers on the roof were taken aback by the unexpected movement, and several fell onto the roof. Lucy was pushed aside by the other dancers and fell. She knocked down other dancers on the ground beside the car, and several people sat down together, including Antonia. Seeing the situation, Ronald rushed over. Lucy sat on the ground, clutching her ankle. "Are you alright, Lucy?" Ronald squeezed through the circle of dancers to ask. "I twisted my ankle, but it doesn't seem too serious." Lucy struggled to stand up on one leg and hopped a couple of times on one foot, holding onto the car. "Don't move, I'll help you." Gene, also from Harlem, supported Lucy's arm with his shoulder and helped her hop to the side to rest. The resident doctor quickly came over to check Lucy's ankle. Antonia was terrified. If she was injured, it would be disastrous for her, who had already been accepted into the New York City Ballet. She sat on the ground, still somewhat shaken. Ronald walked over and knelt down, asking Antonia with his eyes about her injuries. Antonia moved her arms, legs, neck, and waist, saying, "I'm fine." I saw Lucy fall and bring other dancers down with her. To avoid them, I deliberately fell to the ground. She struggled to stand up. Ronald noticed a large stain on the back of her dance costume. The fall didn't seem as easy as she made it sound. So he stepped in to stop her. He knelt down, letting Antonia wrap her arms around his neck, supporting her waist with one hand and lifting her legs with the other, and carried her a few steps, placing her on a chair next to the on-site doctor. The doctor had examined Lucy. She had sprained her ankle and needed rest, essentially ending her filming. The usually cheerful, dark-skinned girl cried sadly. The doctor then examined Antonia, asking many questions. Antonia was fortunate to be uninjured. She had only cut her palm slightly from bracing herself on her hand. Ronald let out a sigh of relief, bending down to watch the doctor apply medicine to Antonia's hand. He then stood up and turned to the Italian-American driver. A group of dancers and extras were already confronting the Italian drivers. Unlike the previous 2 times, this time, an extra had been injured, and the dancers were relentless, demanding that the driver of the Cadillac be fired. Several black dancers were even shouting that they wanted to beat him up. Ronald pushed through the crowd. They trusted the young man who had invented leg warmers for the dancers and secured a cooling solution, so they let him walk to the driver. Ronald stared into the driver's eyes for over 10 seconds without saying a word. The driver finally began to avoid his gaze, at which point Ronald suddenly spoke. "Why did you do that dangerous stunt of suddenly starting the car?" The director hinted at it, the driver said, then realized something was wrong and stopped. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some didn't believe it, accusing the driver of talking nonsense, while others, remembering the operator's warning, privately began to believe him. Ronald glanced back at the director talking to the producer in the distance, then turned back to the drivers, saying, "In any case, you're not fit to continue driving on set." A representative from the Screen Actors Guild also came over and said to everyone, "Don't be afraid, kids, you've all received the wages stipulated by the union. The Screen Actors Guild will protect your legal rights. Alan, you can't do such dangerous stunts for the sake of performance." The producer had just finished negotiating with the Screen Actors Guild representative. "We pay the dancers the union's minimum wage. Theoretically, they can claim to be union members and even strike. I didn't make him suddenly start the car, David. I just had him do some special moves to surprise the actors. Don't treat me like a child, Alan." The producer was a little angry, ignoring Alan and walking towards the extras. After Alan finished shirking responsibility, he seemed to realize someone was watching him and turned to look at the extras, his eyes meeting Ronald's. No more dangerous sudden movements. The driver who caused the accident is no longer allowed to work on set. He must apologize to the injured dancers. The actor involved will receive an extra week's pay, and Lucy and the other 2 will get a cameo appearance. Ronald reported the actors' demands to producer David Da Silva. That's it. Do you think that's acceptable? If you agree, filming can resume," Ronald replied. "The actors' union representatives are initiating a strike by the extras. But the extras really just want more pay and more screen time. A strike won't benefit them much. If you agree, there won't be a strike. Of course, I can agree to let them resume filming. I owe you one, Ronnie." The producer breathed a sigh of relief, fearing that delays during large-scale filming would cause significant cost overruns. Even just contacting the city hall to close the roads wouldn't be something that could be done quickly. Ronald pulled the driver away, apologized to everyone, and then led him away from the extras, escorting him off the set. The driver thanked Ronald as well. If it hadn't been for the mediation between the 2 sides, he would have been badly beaten. "It's not my fault, brother. Your director made me do it this way," the driver explained along the way. "What exactly did the director say to you? Did he personally tell you to suddenly start the car?" "He said he liked my performance, that I gave the actors a genuine reaction. He wanted me to film another take of the unexpected action, and he also said to be careful not to do any dangerous stunts." The driver's voice trailed off. Hints without leaving any evidence. What a ruthless director who'll stop at nothing to achieve his filming goals. Ronald glanced back at Alan Parker, remembering what a taxi driver, Bert, had told him about the director not allowing actors to shower during filming. Chapter 98 Poisonous Snake. "That was really amazing dancing. It really inspired me to create something." Film composer Michael Gore praised the dancers' enthusiasm. "The melody of Hot Things is absolutely fantastic. You know, Ronald, I always need to listen to some classic pop songs before I start composing, and Hot Things really sparked my creativity. Maybe I can get an Oscar nomination for this song." Songs should be Grammys, right? Ronald was a layman in the recording industry, only knowing that the Grammys were the annual music awards, like the Oscars were for the film industry. No, the Grammys only have the Best Original Score award. The theme song I'm writing now is a song, and only the Oscars have the Best Original Song award? I see. Ronald sat on a stool, watching Alan Parker directing the camera crew in the distance. It was the third day of filming on 46th Street, the last afternoon of the closed filming period requested by the producers. 2 days earlier, Ronald had brilliantly resolved the accident caused by the driver, giving Lucy and 2 other dancers a chance to appear in the final graduation performance. Lucy, ironically, benefited from the misfortune. Although she sprained her ankle, she would be in the front row of the choir, singing a line in the graduation performance, with a 1-second solo scene. The producer was also satisfied. Ronald used his small amount of influence among the extras to get the dancers to agree to his solution of paying compensation, adding scenes, and getting rid of the driver who caused the accident. This prevented the crew from falling into the hell of a strike that led to overtime. The only one who seemed dissatisfied was director Alan Parker. Without the driver who dared to launch a surprise attack, the street dance scene couldn't be said to have fulfilled his personal artistic desires, lacking a confrontation between the dancer and the pedestrian driver. In fact, this shot might only be less than a second on screen. However, director Alan was a tyrant on set. Any crew member who disobeyed him would be berated until they did it his way. In all the days of filming, only Ronald hadn't allowed him to have his way, and he hadn't bothered Ronald afterward. Ronald felt that things wouldn't be over so easily. After resolving the incident from 2 days prior, Alan Parker not only failed to thank him but also gave him a strange look. Ronald always felt there was a sinister side to this Briton's personality, and he wanted to avoid him if possible, not wanting to provoke the director again. He was only on set to gain experience and build his resume. There was no need to create a major conflict with the director. Speaking of which, fame not only gave him a stepping stone into the screenwriting industry, but also qualified him for the Screen Actors Guild, which Ronald was extremely satisfied with. So Ronald stayed far away, behind the camera, discussing the theme song Fame with composer Michael Gore. "What, you don't believe I'll be nominated?" Michael Gore noticed his somewhat distracted expression and assumed he didn't believe him. "Of course I believe you, I'm just a little surprised by your confidence." "Why are you so sure? The movie isn't even finished yet." Ronald was indeed a little puzzled by Gore's overflowing confidence. "That's just how the industry works," Gore's sister, a renowned singer in the record industry, said, her knowledge of records and films far surpassing Ronald's. Best Original Song and Best Original Score, not all films are eligible for these awards. They usually go to dramas or musicals. The theme song for Grease was nominated a few years ago. Actually, the song's quality was quite average. "Ronald, write the lyrics for my theme song. Let's collaborate again." My sister wrote the lyrics for another solo by Erin Cara. "I feel your lyrics are better than hers, they have a poetic quality. Let's collaborate on another one and beat her." Composer Michael Gore was raised by his sister, Leslie, who was far more successful than him professionally. "Of course, do you already have the melody?" Ronald replayed a fragment of the theme song in his mind, a dream sequence that perfectly encapsulated the entire theme, making it easy to copy down. "I already have a section, I'll play it for you." Gore pulled Ronald along to the rehearsal room at Harlan High School next door, and played his opening melody for Ronald on a keyboard synthesizer. Beep, beep beep, beep, beep beep, beep beep, beep. The synthesizer's sound was somewhat mournful, like an art student sobbing as they recounted their experiences. "Baby, look at me. Tell me what you see. You haven't seen the best of me yet. There's so much more inside me, waiting for you to unleash it. I can hold the moon in my hands. Don't you know who I am? Remember my name." He will be famous worldwide. Ronald then sang the lyrics. "Wow, you're a genius, Ronald. How did you do that? How come you could sing the lyrics the first time you heard me play the melody? I've always heard Bob Dylan can do that, singing and writing lyrics at the same time, but this is the first time I've seen someone do it in person. You're amazing. I just felt that this song should be sung this way." Ronald couldn't explain his sudden inspiration. No, geniuses are just different from ordinary people. Some songs' lyrics and music are written in just 10 minutes. I felt inspired, as if the melody was already there. I was just inspired by you and the dancers, dreamed about this song, and copied down its notes. Gore played the entire melody. Ronald compared it. Gore's first draft wasn't quite complete in some places, but it was already very close to the original in his dream. Since Gore also had a sudden inspiration, Ronald simply wrote the entire song's lyrics on a piece of paper, signed his name and dated it, and handed it to Gore. Gore sang and talked, also correcting the unnatural transitions in the melody. He wrote a melody on the score paper and then handed it to Ronald, indicating that he should copy the lyrics under the notes. The two signed at the end, noting the date, to commemorate this pleasant collaboration. At the top of the score paper, Gore wrote, "To my friend, Ronald Lee. In memory of our two collaborations in the film fame, you're the most talented lyricist I've ever met, Michael Gore." "Oh, thank you, Michael, that's too kind." Ronald took the sheet music, carefully folded it twice, and tucked it into his notebook. "I'll have to keep this safe. Should your beautiful lawyer sign me?" Gore asked. "Yes, I can't find a music agent to sign me," Ronald joked. "Want me to introduce you to one?" "No, my focus is still on making movies. I wonder how much royalties these two songs will give me, maybe enough to cover my college graduation film expenses, besides my lawyer fees." Ronald started thinking positively. The two songs might bring in a few $1,000s in lyricist royalties, easing some of his financial burden. It's not certain how much? Not many movie soundtracks chart. I think you should focus more on awards. Maybe you'll get your first Oscar nomination. Nominations for soundtracks are shared by the lyricist and composer, Gore explained to Ronald. I'd rather get a Best Original Screenplay nomination, so I'd have a chance to make my own movie. Ronald and Gore started bragging to each other. "Ah, Ronald, you're here. The producer and director are looking for you. You need to get to the set." An assistant came up to Ronald, saw him, and quickly pulled him to the set on 46th Street. "Wait, what do they want?" Ronald was puzzled. He had already been very low-key, so why were they looking for him? "The director and producer are arguing because of Gene. They want you to go ask about something." The assistant didn't know the details either, only that it was related to Gene's filming. "Impossible, Alan Leroy. This role is the lead role I've booked for the TV series Fame." Upon entering the set, I heard producer David De Silva shouting loudly. This was somewhat unusual. It was rare to see producer David De Silva and director Alan Parker speaking so loudly. David had always been somewhat appeasing the director, catering to his artistic pursuits. "I don't understand this plot setup. What's wrong with it? Montgomery's character is also out of the closet, isn't he?" Alan Parker asked dismissively, squinting. "It's different, Alan, it's different. I invited you to participate in the TV series a long time ago, but you refused. You promised me you wouldn't interfere with my plans." David De Silva was agitated, speaking rapidly. "Leroy is the leading man in the TV series. Half the viewership among teenage audiences depends on him. Today, suddenly changing his background to an out-of-closet bisexual is killing the character of Leroy. I absolutely disagree, but you wrote him as a heterosexual who is popular with girls, which is emasculating the dramatic conflict of Leroy's character. This is my film, and I call the shots today." Alan Parker suggested adding a coming-out scene. Choreographer Louis Falco quietly approached Ronald and told him the reason for the conflict. It turned out the director and producer had a disagreement over a scene added today for Gene's character, Leroy. Leroy was in dance class, wearing a leotard and leggings, and was mocked by his neighborhood kids in Harlem. They called him a sissy, a fag, and a nightmare gigolo. In the end, Leroy got into a fight with the kids and even gave a confession on camera, revealing his homosexuality and his status as a human being. Ronald felt this scene was superfluous. Montgomery's character already had a scene where he came out in acting class, revealing his deepest secret, that he was gay. This sensitive subject already had enough dramatic conflict. Why add another scene for Gene? "Hey, Ronnie, you're here. Alan said you can understand the intention behind this scene." David De Silva saw Ronald. "Isn't this scene redundant?" "It is a bit redundant," Ronald was about to reply. Alan Parker, in a cold tone, preemptively stated his opinion. "Don't you want to fight for your equality, Ronald? You and Gene have always been good friends. This scene was added specifically for you two. You need to make him brave enough to stand up for himself in the movie." Ronald felt himself being targeted by this venomous snake, a cold, slippery British viper, which, without warning, flicked its tongue, ready to bite his neck. Chapter 99 Rescue. To publicly smear Ronald as Gene's partner was an extremely malicious tactic. In 1979 America, conservative and religious forces were still very powerful outside of a few major cities on the east and west coasts. There was little tolerance for people like Gene. In many southern states, it was even treated as a medical condition, with people being sent to specialized correctional facilities. While the entertainment industry was quite tolerant, and many were gay, no one would publicly acknowledge it. The reason was simple: if you publicly acknowledged it, you could no longer act in romantic comedies or any films with romantic subplots. This effectively excluded 99% of movies and television. The vast majority of American viewers wouldn't know you were gay and still watch your romantic comedies. On the other hand, the actor playing Montgomery was heterosexual. Although publicly coming out in acting class was extremely unconventional, some viewers were accepting because they knew it was a heterosexual actor playing a character. When that actor performs in other films, the audience can understand that the previous role was just a character in another film. There won't be much of a barrier to transitioning to a new movie role. Even the newly crowned Oscar winner, Jon Voight, has played a gay character before. The Midnight Cowboy role didn't hinder his acting career; on the contrary, it made him an overnight sensation. This is the reality in America today: you can play a gay character on screen, but you can never admit to being one in public. Besides, Ronald isn't gay at all. This mudslinging smear immediately put Ronald in a very difficult position. This British Viper's timing was too perfect. Now he's proposing to add a scene, because Montgomery's character has already portrayed coming out, so everyone on set won't feel that this is specifically targeted at Jean and Ronald. It will be seen as a normal debate about art. This also puts Jean in the spotlight. If Jean doesn't act out this scene, everyone on set will think he's hypocritical. The actor playing Montgomery didn't say anything, and you yourself are likely one of them, yet you're unwilling to speak up for your own people? If Jean plays the role, his acting career will be completely ruined, his image forever fixed as the two-way plug Leroy in the film version of Fame. Perhaps this is one of Alan Parker's purposes: he doesn't want producer David De Silva to make a TV series of the same name, turning his, considered, great realist work into a soap opera. Another purpose is simply to severely retaliate against Jean and Ronald, who had challenged his authority. Two young men dared to disrespect him on set. In Alan Parker's view, this was intolerable and deserved punishment. Your plot design doesn't fit Leroy's usual character and persona. The producer was also furious at the sudden attack. This was going to ruin his TV series plans. The audience already knows that Leroy was dating Hillary in Coco. Suddenly adding a homosexual subplot here will only confuse them. They won't know who Leroy is or what happened to him, David De Silva stated, artfully explaining why the story didn't work. He must have racked his brains to come up with this legitimate reason to reject the director's outrageous plan. This is just my idea. If you insist on not filming it this way, we can change the plot. I just think this is a good opportunity for people like you to speak out in public. Alan Parker feigned regret, not insisting on filming the scene. No, he doesn't want to film this scene at all, Ronald realized. When did the set tyrant Alan Parker become so agreeable? So easily giving up his artistic ideas? It seems that this move, near the end of filming, was mainly to retaliate against Ronald, Jean, and De Silva, three people who had offended him. And this so-called concession was to further solidify the fact that Ronald and Jean were partners. Ronald's eyes narrowed, his blood boiling. This disgusting method of settling personal scores is very much like the British way: cold, disgusting, and harming others doesn't necessarily benefit oneself. Ordinary words won't change the people's perception of him. Even if he denies it, he's already planted seeds of doubt in everyone's minds. Besides, Jean is genuinely gay. If he becomes famous in the entertainment industry, everyone will associate Ronald Lee with Jean Ray. That's not a good reputation. How will he survive in the entertainment industry? How will he find a girlfriend in the industry? Ronald thought for a dozen seconds. He had to dispel this rumor in a way that would leave a lasting impression. Perhaps there were better methods, perhaps his own ideas weren't very rational, but this wasn't a strategic maneuver. If he lost this 1 minute, once Alan Parker announced filming, there would be no way to retaliate. Then, no one would remember that Ronald had been good to them. In the future, when they talked about the famous crew, their first impression would be, "Do you know Jean and Ronald?" Hey. Ronald didn't want that impression to be etched in everyone's minds. He stepped forward, facing Alan Parker alone, ready to give him a good beating. Yes, Ronald's solution was to beat up the director. Using violence to dispel the rumors about himself would definitely leave a lasting impression. Perhaps in the future, when the crew talked about the famous crew, they would remember, you know what? Alan exposed Ronald's secret, and Ronald beat him up badly. That didn't seem so good. But Ronald didn't care. He clenched his fists, staring directly at Alan Parker. His fighting instincts made Ronald's eyes flash with ferocity, and Alan reacted instinctively, raising his hands in a boxing stance, signaling him to stay away. It was as if he were saying, "I've trained too, come at me if you dare," Ronald sneered. This was a real brawl, not a boxing match in a rope ring. Today, he'd let Alan experience the taste of Chinese wrestling. "To be honest, Alan, you're blind," choreographer Louis Falco's words interrupted Ronald's plans. The lead actress of the film, Erin Carla, who plays Coco, walked over, took Jean's hand, and the two walked affectionately out of the set and headed to the dressing room. Everyone, including Ronald, was stunned by this sudden turn of events. When did they get together? Moreover, Ronald knew that unlike himself, who was simply framed by Alan Parker, Jean was truly. As they walked, the crowd began to whistle and applaud in celebration. Ronald noticed the smiling producer David Da Silva in the crowd, and the man in a suit behind him. It turned out to be Erin Carla's agent. It seemed the producer and Jean had been prepared all along. There were no fools in this industry. Perhaps, except for himself, he had thought that avoiding the snakes would prevent them from biting. Ronald began to examine his previous strategy of constant avoidance. "So this infatuation is one-sided, Ronnie," Alan Parker's venomous voice came again. "Was your anger over Meg Tilly's rejection all an act? Or are you the two-way connector? You brought this on yourself, Alan," Ronald thought to himself, recalling how Alan brought up Meg again, reminding him to settle the score as well. A gentle breeze brushed Ronald's face, and a familiar face appeared before him. It was Antonia Franceschi, wearing her dance costume, her coat tied around her waist. Antonia smiled at him. Today, her blonde hair was tied back in a ponytail. She was still wearing the leg warmers Ronald had given her that day, her soft-soled ballet shoes moving lightly. She circled Ronald halfway around, at a distance that was neither too close nor too far, neither too near nor too far. They were neither strangers on the subway nor a couple already in a relationship. Ronald felt his anger suddenly vanish, replaced by that smiling face filling every space in his heart. Antonia took 2 steps forward, then noticed Ronald hadn't followed, still standing there dumbfounded. She couldn't help but turn back to look at him. His 2 bright red ears made Antonia chuckle again. He was quite adorable. She then tossed her head, signaling Ronald to follow. Ronald saw Antonia's signal, paused for half a second, then suddenly understood. Just like Erin Carla was arranged by her agent and producers to save Jean Ray, Antonia was an angel who had come to rescue him from this embarrassing situation. But no one had instructed her. Antonia had come voluntarily to save Ronald's reputation. Ronald laughed heartily, ignoring Alan Parker beside him, and followed. He gently raised his arm for Antonia to hug, and the two walked towards the dressing room outside the set. Ronald whispered "thank you" in Antonia's ear. "No need to thank me, Ronnie. You're like a knight-errant, you've saved me twice before. Once for the leg warmers, and once for Lucy falling off the carriage, and then the princess saved the knight in return. I love the ending of this story." Whistles and applause erupted once more. "Alan, you're really blind," the choreographer said again. Chapter 100 Agents and Film Critics. Ronald and Antonia shared a deep kiss goodbye. He watched Antonia walk towards the world-famous film set. Antonia worked incredibly hard, even going to the rehearsal room every morning during filming. Besides driving Antonia around, Ronald spent his days reflecting on his progress. Today, he had an appointment with his agent, Eddie, to discuss an agency contract. Turning the car around, Ronald went to Eddie's office. Ronald, I heard you've been making waves lately, not only making waves on Alan Parker's set but also gaining Woody Allen's favor. How about it? Am I fortunate enough to sign you as a valuable client?" Eddie, having been informed by the receptionist, personally came out to greet Ronald and lead him into his office. "I wrote lyrics for 2 songs for the film, and I've been credited on the script. I also received pay slips for the extras, and I'm a minimum-level member of the Directors Guild. So, can you represent me in screenwriting, lyrics, acting, and directing?" Wait a minute. Eddie didn't immediately understand Ronald's long list of business dealings. "When did you start writing lyrics and becoming an actor?" Ronald laughed. He had indeed done a lot of work these past few months. He told Eddie about his experiences on set. "Ronnie, you've never had an agent before, have you?" Eddie thought for a moment and asked. "Yes, this is my first time signing an agent. You know, although they're all called agents, the job responsibilities of agents in different industries are actually quite different." "Huh? I thought they were all agents." "No, No, Ronnie. Let me put it this way. A screenwriter's agent's main job is to sell the client's script to producers, or to get script revision work from producers for the client. So their main job every day is to call people on the producer list one after another. Ronald nodded in understanding. I mainly represent actors and models, and my main job is to find audition opportunities for them. I maintain close contact with casting directors and attend various social events to find out about new films and new commercials. No wonder he had a good relationship with Julia Taylor from the casting studio. A director's agent mainly finds opportunities for them to direct films planned by the 8 major studios. Or they take the director's script and find investors. So you see, although they're all called agents, their jobs and social networks are very different. People in the industry who work across multiple fields usually have multiple agents representing different businesses. Ronald nodded. So, which business of mine would you like to represent? Eddie, sitting behind his desk, laughed. I've been waiting for you to say that, Ronnie. I'd like to represent your directing business. I have some models on my team who are often called in to audition for TV commercials, so I'm quite familiar with the commercial departments of major TV stations. They've always been very interested in young people who are willing to direct TV commercials. TV commercials? That's fine too. It's better than having no directors at all. Ronald thought it was worth a try. He wasn't very well known in the industry, and having a commercial director would not only help him hone his directing skills, but also earn him some money. Give me the contract, and I'll have my lawyer take a look, Ronald agreed. So Lindsay Dahl is your personal lawyer now? My friend Bobby, who is also the owner of Lindsay's firm, is very satisfied with her. She's brought a lot of new business to the firm. Yes, she solved a lot of problems for me. I'm eligible to join the Writers Guild, all thanks to her efforts. Ronald reached for the agent contract in Eddie's hand. Wait, Eddie pulled her hand back before Ronald could take the contract. When you become a TV director, you must cast more of my actors. Of course, no problem. Under the same conditions, I'll definitely choose your people first. Ronald took the contract Eddie handed him again and faxed it to lawyer Lindsay Dole. Lindsay seemed to have brought a lot of new business to the law firm. There were no more phone calls going unanswered. After receiving the revised contract from the lawyer, Ronald and Eddie reviewed it and had no objections. They signed it. Ronald officially became Eddie Cohen's director-client for 1 year, with the option to renew for another 3 years. Cohen is a typical Jewish surname. Ronald asked Eddie if he was Jewish. You could say that, but I don't go to the synagogue much anymore. Eddie is a relatively open-minded Jew, retaining his identity, but he's quite far removed from traditional Jewish customs. As long as you retain your Jewish shrewdness, I'll be satisfied. Hey, that's labeling someone, Eddie protested jokingly. So when can I get a job directing commercials? Ronald was a little impatient. Relax, my friend. You haven't officially enrolled at NYU yet, have you? Once you're there, you can add another competitive qualification to your resume. I've seen the rock high school you were in. Think back to which segments you directed. I'll mark them and send them to the advertising production directors on Madison Street. Ronald nodded, beginning to recall his directing segments from the theatrical release. He then wrote them down and let Eddie handle it. Actually, your most promising career path is as a pop lyricist, Ronnie, Eddie said after reviewing all his materials. Michael Gore speaks highly of you. I remember his sister Leslie, the #1 pop star back then. His assessment won't be too far off track. If you take this opportunity to get into the industry, you'll have a good start. No, my dream is to be a film director, you know, Eddie. Ronald shook his head. He had only copied the lyrics from his dream, and who knew when he would dream of a new movie again? Being a lyricist was completely unreliable. Well, the entertainment industry definitely requires focus. You know what? High school rock is really popular right now. Ever since those 2 film critics from PBS Chicago praised High School Rock on TV a couple of days ago, the movie is now a hit among teenagers in Chicago. I haven't seen it yet. Film critics have TV shows too. Ronald hadn't expected someone to lend a helping hand and make High School Rock popular in New York. It seemed like his share of the profits was in the bag. Yes, they're from the Chicago Herald-Tribune. They have a show called Sneak Peek on PBS Chicago, reviewing films every week, and the ratings are pretty good. PBS is planning to start airing it on its national partners. If PBS weren't a public educational network, the ratings would be even higher, and it would have become a national syndicated program long ago. You probably haven't seen it yet, have you? I have my secretary record it every week. It's a great program for observing the critical sentiment in the film industry. Eddie explains some industry common sense to Ronald. I'll have my secretary make a copy for you. Take it home and watch it yourself. By the way, do you have a VHS VCR? VHS recordings are longer than Betamax tapes. Go buy one, you'll need it when you go to college. Ronald picked up a VHS format JVC VCR he bought at the electronics store, connected the cables according to the instructions, and put in the tape Eddie had given him. After a period of static, music accompanied the two hosts as they began the presentation. First, a bald host appeared on screen, explaining to the audience what cult films are. There's a unique genre of film we call cult films. When they first come out, they often don't do well at the box office. But over time, they gain a following among a segment of the audience, often young people. They dominate midnight screenings, run for several years, and accumulate a considerable total box office. I recommend High Rock to everyone. It has all the qualities of a cult film, rock music, beautiful girls, and then they blow up the school at the end. It's practically every American high school student's dream. This movie has a greasy vibe, but it's closer to real life than greasy. It's a great choice for your midnight movie. The camera then panned to another bespectacled, chubby man. Cisco gave his opinion, recommending High Rock. I can only say that it was a little short of my recommendation. I really liked this movie, it thrilled me, and I especially liked the female lead, Sauls. PJ Sauls is the female lead's name, Albert, Cisco reminded his partner. PJ Sauls acted very well, the whole movie was full of energy. He definitely won't put you to sleep. Also, I have to remind the audience of a detail. At the end of the film, the credits give special thanks to a man named Ronald Lee. According to Roger Coleman, the boss of New World Productions, he is the same Ronald Lee who fell asleep during the theatrical release of The Deer Hunter. He was involved in directing, acting, and post-production editing of the film. Viewers, you might notice a scene in the film where a man proposes to his girlfriend in a phone booth. That man is Sleepyhead, although he fell asleep while watching The Deer Hunter. It seems Sleepyhead's movies never make you sleepy. Because of his contribution, I've changed my opinion of high rock and roll, and I've decided to recommend this movie as well. Kids in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and even across the country should see the midnight showing. You'll be satisfied. As he spoke, the bespectacled, chubby man named Albert and a bald man named Cisco both gave a thumbs up, indicating their recommendation for High Rock and Roll. It's a good thing this show isn't broadcast syndicated, otherwise the nickname would be everywhere, Ronald thought. It seems the reviews are quite good. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.